Okay, Trustee Veras, whenever you're ready.
Hey, thank you, Crystal. Welcome, everyone. We are now reconvened from our closed session. This is the LA Community College Board of Trustees, July 7th, regular board meeting. And if I can ask for a roll call.
Trustee Buelna? Absent. Trustee Fong?
Here.
Trustee Henderson?
Here.
Trustee Hoffman?
She is here. I'm pulling her into the panelist room.
Perfect. Thank you, Crystal. Trustee Moreno?
Here.
Trustee Vela?
Here.
Trustee Veras?
Here.
Student Trustee Martinez? She noted that she has a doctor's appointment and might not be able to make it. She had a muscle in her back hurt. Okay, thank you.
This is
Thank you.
Trustee Hoffman. I'm here.
Perfect.
don't know what
Thank you.
So noted. Okay, thank you. Thank you all. We do have quorum, so we'll go ahead and begin our meeting. First, we have our flag salute today, and our flag salute is going to be led, and it's been our tradition here, or our recent tradition, with COVID relieving us or relegating us to Zoom and the online experience, where we don't get a chance to get out and visit our schools in person and see our students in person, that we've invited students to join us here and kick our meetings off with the flag salute. Today, we have our wonderful student from Los Angeles Valley College, who I know joined Trustee Henderson and myself on a panel recently that was dealing with student hunger and housing and homelessness, and so he did a wonderful job there. But let me introduce Christopher Vanek, and Christopher is an LA native and a hair and makeup artist that has been very successful in the beauty and entertainment industries. After a medical leave in the summer of 2019, Chris lost his job, and with COVID was unable to find another. So he chose to go back to school to earn a bachelor's degree to be able to work in the medical field. Christopher currently has straight A's as a nursing major at Los Angeles Valley College, and he will lead us in the flag salute. And Christopher, if I can ask you to say a few words about yourself and about your experience at Valley College, and anything you'd like to let the Board of Trustees and all the audience know after our flag salute here. So let me pass it on to you, Christopher.
Thank you so much, Trustee Veras. Yeah, I mean, thank you for the warm welcome and a great introduction. I feel so fortunate, with COVID. I think a lot of people are, all in the same boat of like, what are we going to do? And, I feel so fortunate for Valley College and for another opportunity to, rebuild my professional life, to rebrand myself, to just have another opportunity. I did lose pretty much everything in 2019, and I'm just so fortunate to be receiving, like a fee waiver, and just help with food, and with medical, and with everything that Valley College and LACCD has given me. I'm joining you from my hotspot that I was awarded. So thank you so much for the opportunity. It's very reassuring, refreshing. It's given me a new outlook on life. So I'm just grateful to be here. This is such an amazing experience. Yeah, so with that, shall I lead everybody in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely.
Awesome. I'm a Boy Scout, so I'm going to do the Boy Scout way. If everybody would like to join me, please put your right hand over your heart. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, I went off on the other tangent. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. And to, oh my God, did I just mess it up?
You got it. I think you got it all in.
Okay, I just had like a flashback of, am I saying the national anthem right now? Sorry, it's been a while.
No, you did wonderfully. Appreciate that. Thank you for your words.
Returning them. Thank you very much.
That's okay. You did fantastic. So thank you, Christopher. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. So next, we're going to go ahead and kick it off. Today's meeting, we're going to be adjourning in a number of individuals who've had an incredible impact at the LACCD and in education politics. So let me read off a few names. I'm going to ask Trustee to comment on one of them, and I'm going to ask Trustee Moreno to comment on another, because I know there were long relationships and friendships there. So first, we'll be adjourning in memory of Miss Julie Pepe, was an assistant computer network support specialist at LA Mission College, who served as an employee of LACCD for 25 years. She joined LACCD in 1993 as a student worker and was hired as a full-time employee in 1996. She served or worked at LA Mission College, where she served in the IT team. Julie was eager to participate in team discussions and actively collaborated with her peers. She was a dedicated worker and always focused on the support of Mission College students. And she'll be missed by her colleagues and the OIT team and all who interacted with her. Next, Miss Judy McKinney was a senior office assistant in LA Trade Tech College. She has served at Trade Tech College for more than 20 years. She traveled as a child as part of a military family and lived in a time in Germany before settling in Los Angeles in 1996. She graduated from LA Southwest College and was a valuable member of the LACCD family. Judy's mother, Mrs. Juanita McKinney, and her sisters Francine, Venus McKinney, are appreciative of the thoughts and prayers that we extend them. So next we'll be journeying in memory and remembering Dr. Richard Zapanta, philanthropist, civic leader, East Los Angeles College alumnus. And I wanted to give the opportunity to Trustee Moreno to say a few words about Richard Zapanta. Trustee, are you there?
Yeah, Trustee Veras, thank you. Richard was a close friend of mine. We traveled together, and he joined us at East LA College way back in 1991 when I first arrived there, and he's been was a fantastic supporter of the school. He started the Chicanos for Creative Medicine program there, transferred many would-be doctors from East LA College to the medical program at USC. He also is very generous as a contribution to our foundation as well as the gallery. So he truly is a man of the community and somebody is truly missed, and a very close friend of mine. And thank you for recognizing him at this time.
Okay, thank you, Trustee. Next, we have Ken Burt, and I know Andrea had requested that we place him on the agenda to adjourn in his memory, and I also have very long time fond memories of Ken Burt, having been the longtime political director for the California faculty or the California Federation of Teachers, and I think we've served on several panels together. He was an incredible gentleman and wonderful education advocate. And so with that, I wanted to turn it over to Trustee Hoffman to say a few words about Ken.
Thank you, President Veras. So I knew Ken Burt. He was, number one, such a lovely man, but he was actually the very first political director to have that position with the California Federation of Teachers. And he retired a number of years ago. He had Parkinson's disease. And then most recently, he was diagnosed with ALS. But through it all, and I was following him on his Facebook posts and communicating with him, you know, he lost his ability to speak toward the end, but he could still communicate in writing. And, you know, he had just a lovely, beautiful sense of humor about all of it. He leaves behind a wife and 2 grown children. But the best legacy that he left for all of us in education was Proposition 25. You know, he was the mastermind behind Prop 25, and that was the proposition that passed to lower the threshold to pass a budget in the state legislature to 50% rather than a crazy 2/3 majority. So I'm sad to lose him as a friend. He was wonderful to me when I taught political science, California state and local. government and politics. He was just a political wonk. And I will truly miss him, and I think we all will. And I'm sure President Joanne Waddell probably has a few words she'd like to say as well when we get to the comments from the resource table. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Those were the ones that I had. Trustees, was there any other person desire to be adjourned in memory? Okay. Having said that, those will adjourn in their memories and send notices to the family that this district recognizes their contributions to education, to LACCD, to students, and we value them, and we will miss them, and thank you for that. Next, colleagues, is the approval of the agenda. Before we move to approve, Chancellor, I know there is a couple of changes here. If you can guide the board here in those changes, and then we'll take a motion to approve the item.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Board President Vettis, and good afternoon, board members. Thank you so much and for being here and for leading us in this discussion. I do have one item that I'd like to bring to your attention for removal. It's item BB7. It's a purchase order related to a parking structure LED lighting project at West Los Angeles College that was erroneously moved from the last meeting where it was already approved to this board item. So it does not need to be there. It's been already acted on and approved. So if I could ask that you remove that from today's agenda, that would be appreciated. So that is the only change to the board agenda. Everything else that we present to you as is, sir.
Okay, thank you. So with that, colleagues, is there a motion to approve the agenda with the changes as noted? Okay, motion, Trustee Buelna, seconded by Trustee Fong. Colleagues, any objections to approving this? And I'm going to go with a general consent objections because it is a procedural item as opposed to a technical vote or a technical procedural item. So with that, I see no objections. We'll deem this approved unanimously by the board. Next is the approval of minutes. We have item 1 is regular minutes of June 2nd, and item 2 is regular minutes of May 19th. Can I get a motion to approve both of these items?
Move.
Motion by Trustee Fong, seconded by Trustee Vela. Any objections to approving these unanimously? No, they're deemed approved here. We'll move forward with reports from representatives of employee organizations. Do any members of the resource table wish to be recognized and make comments before the board? If you can please raise your hand and we'll move you into the participant section.
We have President Waddell joining us.
Okay. President Waddell?
Yes, thank you, Board President Veras. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking Trustee Hoffman for her kind words about Ken Bird. He was certainly all that and more. And every time that budget gets approved on June 30th, we should make sure we say thank you and light a candle. So thank you for that. I have a couple other notes here. It's sort of, June was sort of a downtime for the Guild, but certainly one of the highlights of June and perhaps of the school year was the awarding of 11 scholarships from the Guild to students on all campuses, including 5 named scholarships. And, you know, we too, like so many in this room, realize that we are here because of our students and that they certainly need all the help and assistance and support that we can offer them. And so it's something that we do every year, and we were happy to do it this June. We took to consultation with the Chancellor a resolution expressing our concern with some of the tools being used to inform decisions about security. And I think that you may hear more about that during some of the public comments, so I will leave those comments to that. And then, like everyone in the room, we are watching daily the change in the COVID environment again, especially the D variant and now the Lambda variant. The notices, I guess it's good news that our process is working in that the notices of possible exposure go out when someone steps forward to say that they are COVID positive. We have now had 6 of those in the last month to 6 weeks. And so it's certainly not, it's certainly safe to say that the pandemic is not over and that we all must exercise whatever extreme caution we can. On a happier note, or on the same note, but on a happier vein, we were very pleased to see duct cleaning on the agenda under facilities. And we are pleased to note that the campuses are moving forward with doing what they can to make the facilities as safe as they can. And with that, I would thank all of you and wish you a belated happy 4th of July. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, President Waddell. Next, if you can please raise your hand and I will call on you. I believe, one second here.
I have Manny Rangel in the room as well.
Manny Rangel, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. Thank you, board members, board president, chancellor, staff, and students. My name is Manny Rangel with SEIU Local 99, representing classified workers that work in maintenance and operations. First, I want to applaud the board, the chancellor, and the college presidents that have been speaking out about equity and systemic racism in this country and within the LACCD. It is very important. It's a very important and necessary step, but it's also important to remember that it is only the first step. In order to create real change, you must back up your words with actions. We have a significant item to resolve in our negotiations with LACCD. That is the inequity that our members, made up of low-wage workers of color, have been and are currently experiencing. Our members are getting paid 5 to 6% less than their counterparts in the surrounding community colleges in this region. This is absolutely unacceptable. We hope that the board, the chancellor, and the college presidents also find this unacceptable, which is also an important and necessary first step. We need you to take action to resolve this inequity. As the largest community college in the country, LACCD should be leading the way in pay and not be dead last in the region, especially when it comes to low-wage workers. Keep in mind that your actions or inactions speak louder than words. I also want to once again bring up the topic of custodial staffing. I want to recognize SEIU Local 99 members that worked hard to provide a clean and sanitary work environment for all LACCD employees and students to come back to. Due to the shortage of custodial staff, the real challenge is going to be sustaining cleanliness and sanitation when students come back to in-person learning. If you think that LACCD has enrollment issues now, if there are issues with cleaning and sanitation at the colleges, you can see an exodus of students that decide that LACCD is not sanitary enough to attend. A situation like this will devastate all stakeholders. SEIU Local 99 is willing to work with LACCD to prevent a situation like this from occurring. We have heard some custodial staffing ideas floating out there that are guaranteed to fail. And this is not the time to gamble on that kind of stuff. It's important that we work together to make sure that we get it right. We can't afford to get it wrong. Thank you all for your time and your attention to these very important issues.
Thank you. Next, Crystal Lupa, can you help me out here in terms of the participant requests?
President Echeverry is in the room as well.
Okay, thank you. Then let's pass it on to her, President Echeverry.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the board president for acknowledging the passing of Julie Pepe from Mission College. Julie worked there her entire life pretty much. I knew her from when she was a student worker, and she was extremely dedicated to Mission College and our students. So it's a huge shock and a loss to hear about her passing. So again, thank you for mentioning her. I also wanted to reiterate that one of our major areas of focus in this coming year is going to be how to address COVID-19 related learning loss. And I think we need to be very proactive in how to deal with learning loss, in particular in the areas of math and English. So I don't think we can overstate how critical this is going to be, especially when we look at our enrollment and our loss of first-time students. So I think it's very, very important for us to find novel and innovative ways to deal with the challenges our students are facing after 16 months of remote education. We have a couple new Senate presidents, one at City and one at Trade. And I also would like to announce that we had a very large group of faculty, I think about 70, that we sent to the ASCCC, the State Academic Senate Leadership Institute, and we're really trying to groom new Senate leadership. And we have another large group that is going to be attending the Curriculum Institute later this month. So again, a lot happening, but we are looking forward to coming back in person. Many of us, including myself, will be back in person in the fall. And I think as we move toward a sense of normalcy, I know there are going to be a lot of challenges for us, but I think that we need to really look at our student needs and how they've changed because of the pandemic and the learning loss that has occurred. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other
Dr.
requests
Limbaugh,
from the resource table?
Dr. Limbaugh, you can unmute yourself and address the board.
Thank you. Thank you, President Verdes, Chancellor Rodriguez, and members of the board for this opportunity to make two announcements. The first is I'm very pleased to announce that Dr. Jeffrey Archibald, as of yesterday, is the new Vice President for Academic Affairs at West Los Angeles College. He was formerly the Dean of Social Sciences at Pasadena City College, and we're very happy for him to join us. And the second announcement is one of congratulations. All of us here at West Los Angeles College want to thank our Aguiar for her many years of service to West, and we wish her all the best as she takes on her tenure as the new interim president at Pierce College. So congratulations, Aura, from everybody over here at West. Thank you, President Veras.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? I think I see a hand in the attendees section. Is that for public speaking or is that from the resource table?
It looks like it's public speaking. Should we have?
We'll hold that.
Okay.
Well, no, we'll hold that. Is there any other employee representatives or comments from the resource table?
No, Trustee Veras, there's nobody here. Okay,
Okay.
we're done.
Thank you. We'll close that item. We'll move forward to public comment. Audience members and attendees here, we have two public comments. Actually, today we had three, including closed session. But the first is this next one is for requests to address the Board of Trustees regarding regular agenda matters. So at this point in the meeting, we will take public comment on matters on the agenda. And so I will read a regulatory notice here, and then we'll proceed with those that are listed first, and then we'll take those that are interested in making comment thereafter. So the First Amendment and the Brown Act guarantee a member of the public the right to criticize a public employee in the performance of his or her duties. However, speakers are encouraged to focus their comments on issues relevant to the conduct of the public's business rather than on private or unrelated matters. I do believe we have a number of individuals signed up. Each agenda item has up to 20 minutes. And at this moment, it sufficiently fits within the time minutes allowed for. So speakers will have 3 minutes to speak on agenda items. If there are more speakers than that, and we're beyond the 20-minute topic piece, then we'll consider making adjustments here for this public
right
comment
now
period.
We have 11 speakers signed up.
We have 11 speakers signed up for different items or the same item?
Two of them are for different items, and the remaining are for the Chancellor's presentation on safety.
Chancellor's presentation. Okay. Colleagues, if that takes us to 9 speakers on one item, so that will take us above our board rule 20-minute item. So if I can ask for to extend our time limit, allow speakers to speak for 2 minutes, and we'll get through all the that are listed there. Can I get a motion to make that quick rule change here?
Move approval.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Moreno. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Vela. And if I'll go by a quick roll call vote here. So Trustee Buena for 2 minutes speaking. Okay, we'll come back to Trustee Buena. Trustee Vela.
Yes.
Okay, Trustee Moreno.
Yes.
Trustee Fong.
Yes.
Trustee Hoffman.
Yes.
Okay, Trustee Henderson.
Yes.
Trustee Buena, let me try you one more time. Okay, and I will vote yes. So speakers. Okay, Trustee Buena, you vote yes. So speakers, each of you will be afforded minutes to speak on the topic, and we're going to take every individual that's signed up. First, let's do the Chancellor's report item first, and then we'll take the other speakers after that group. Lupe or Crystal, can you call out the first speaker?
Yes, the first speaker is Zachary Knorr, and we're moving him in right now.
Hello?
Hello, hi. Okay,
All
you
right.
have 2 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Hello, Board of Trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I wanted to speak in reference to the report by the Hillard Hines Company that's going to be looked at later. And a number of my colleagues, I think, are going to speak about some of the shortcomings of this survey itself. But I wanted to speak to the issue of the importance of the board keeping our values and our mission statement in mind when making this decision. So I just wanted to quote a couple things. A little over a year ago, one of our students, Andres Guardado, I know everyone knows this, was shot 5 times in the back by an LA sheriff. And the day after that, the board issued a statement saying we must never be desensitized to or normalized by the alarming number of deaths by law enforcement of Black and brown men and women in this country. It cannot be tolerated, and the time for police reform is now. A month after that, in the Chancellor's framework for racial equity and social justice, he referred to the murder as an absolute unwarranted tragedy, and that it represents a tipping point for our actions. So as the board is making decisions about who to move forward for in terms of campus safety and security, I would like the board to keep those in mind. In the year since then, we haven't seen any reforms from the sheriffs. The sheriffs have refused to cooperate with the coroner's investigation, which ruled the killing of Andres Guardado a homicide. We know that the LA sheriffs has a history of white supremacist gang activity. And I would like to ask if the board stands by these commitments that it made a year ago. And if so, I would ask that you bring those commitments to an investigation of this survey and to this issue. I do not think that bringing the sheriff's organization onto our campuses is in line with the statements either of the board or the chancellor. So I respect the words that you have stated, and I'm hoping that as you make these decisions, you keep those words in mind and act appropriately. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Christopher Strickland. Dr. James McKeever. You can unmute yourself, sir. Thank you. 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your time. I want to remind everyone that we're here now because the sheriff pulled out of the contract with the district because they wanted more money than the district was willing to offer. The LACCD hired Hillard Hines to assess the needs of the campus for an open bid process, not to get the sheriffs back. And we expected the district to honor that understanding. Many of us had pointed out long before the results of the Hillard-Hines survey that was highly flawed and prejudicial by the standards of social science research and should be disregarded in its entirety. For the past 7 years, we've been laying off faculty, cutting faculty pay, and downsizing class offerings, yet the sheriffs kept asking for increases in their budget. Whoever gets the next contract needs to understand the fiscal constraints we are under and be willing to carry out the contract for a reasonable cost. We want a fair, transparent process in selecting a new campus safety organization. Whichever organization we choose, private or public, will not have a record of civil rights violations. The organization will have a history of practicing community policing and have demonstrated transparency as a core value. The organization should exemplify the mission and values of the LACCD. Remember, when the district and the Board of Trustees choose, they are not just approving of the organization's record, but are willing to support the organization financially, thus owning the record. Please make the right choice, as Lyndon Johnson did when he signed the Civil Rights Bill, Barack Obama when he came out in support of LGBTQIA rights, both unpopular at the time, did. We must be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Christopher Strickland.
Yes, thank you, board, for hearing us today. I want the Hillard-Hines survey to be disregarded in its entirety and would like a fair and transparent process in selecting a new campus safety organization. Whichever organization we choose, private or public, we would like for the organization to not have a record of civil rights violations. Whichever organization we choose, we want the organization to have a history of practicing community policing and a history of demonstrating transparency as a core value. We cannot keep balancing the budget on the backs of faculty and pay exorbitant fees for campus safety. Whoever does win the contract must understand the fiscal crisis we are in, and we will be able to manage the contract for no more than the original amount offered to the sheriff. Remember, the sheriff stated they could not do it for this amount. We want an organization that will make us all feel safe, particularly the most vulnerable and our students. The organization should exemplify the mission and values of the LACCD. When the district and board of trustees choose, they are not just approving of the organization's record, but are willing to support the organization financially. We must be on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you. Jasmine Alcaraz.
Hello, Board of Trustees. My name is Jasmine Alcaraz, and I am a student intern with AFT 1521. I am also a student from ELAC campus and sometimes take evening courses. I would like to discuss the consulting firm LACCD used to conduct the survey on the needs of student safety. The survey was flawed and should be disregarded because of the way the survey was constructed. For example, the same person could take it multiple times. The survey could also be taken by people who are not faculty, students, or staff. I could have posted the survey on Facebook and asked my friends and family to take it, and there was no way anyone could verify the status of the respondents. It was also flawed because some of the questions were leading and biased towards the sheriffs. Many sheriff officers do not take their job seriously by staying in their vehicle while someone might need help. For example, I have always seen them on their vehicle instead of doing foot patrol. As a mother and wife, I sometimes need to take the evening courses, and since my husband doesn't trust campus officers to protect me, he would pick me up from class and would walk back together to our car. There are many women who might not be able to have someone with them like my husband, and they might feel powerless at night, and no one should have to worry about the lack of campus safety No one should have to worry about the lack of campus safety. The lack of campus safety shouldn't hold anyone from going back to school, and I'm asking for the board to please disregard the Hillard-Hines survey and to conduct another survey that can only be answered by LACCD faculty, students, and staff. Thank you, Board of Trustee members.
Next, Dale Fields.
Thank you, Board of Trustees, for the chance to speak. I'm speaking both as a scientist and as a queer person. I hope you recognize the term white fragility because this puts the feelings of people of privilege above the actual facts of those minoritized people disproportionately affected by systemic bigotry. Throughout this survey, we employees were constantly asked how we feel about the security. They did not ask, these consultants did not ask about the facts of our students. This inability to recognize this foundation of white supremacy poisons this entire survey. As a scientist, I am deeply concerned and professionally insulted. This is about the bias in this process. No scientists were involved in this project to evaluate and account for the inevitable bias that enters whenever humans are involved. A third of my training as a scientist is about how I can be biased and how to account for that bias. And that attempt was not looked at. This is, beyond this, is that I see that there's, again, this is, we're told primary threat is an active shooter incident and primary concern is homelessness. But again, this is all feelings. This is not actual facts. This is not what's actually happening. Consultants are not going into the facts of what's going on. And when we talk about this is the issues of this is majority of stakeholders. If I have majority of my straight students are succeeding in my class, but the vast majority of my queer students are not, I can't just ignore that equity gap and say the majority of my students are doing well. And the bias within this makes me, this is concerned, this is with the imagery of police, this is inside the survey, it's the results. I ask you to disregard the survey.
Jeff Hicks.
Hi, I want to thank the board for allowing me to speak. Like many of the people here, I'm also asking you guys to disregard the survey that will be presented today. We are academics, we are researchers. To allow a survey that allowed anyone to respond to it, and to allow a survey that allowed multiple people to respond to it would be irresponsible. And as long as we're talking about research, one of the things that, proponents of the sheriffs would bring up often in the emergency meeting that we had was the idea that we needed an armed response on our campuses, and that's just simply not true. Recent research by the Journal of American Medical Association that was published just 2 months ago conclusively showed that armed guards on school campuses do not make us more safe. In fact, the rate of deaths was 2.83 times greater in schools with an armed guard present. An armed officer on the scene was, quote, the #1 factor associated with increased casualties after the perpetrator's use of rifles or submachine guns. Armed guards, in fact, increased the amount of violence in school shootings. We do not need an armed presence in our campuses, and we certainly don't need the sheriffs. You need to look at this from our students' point of view. Please disregard the survey, and please ask our students what they feel. I think our students, and primarily our students of color, will be more than happy to let you know how unpleasant it is to be confronted by a sheriff's department who primarily looks at them as a threat instead of the people that they need to be protecting. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dr. Elizabeth Thornton. Dr. Thornton.
Hi.
Thank you.
Okay. I teach at Valley College, so I attended Hillard Heinz's LAVC safety and security conversation back in May. In my breakout group, a colleague expressed the desire to keep the sheriffs, but with accountability. It got me thinking about what an accountable college bureau could possibly look like as a case study of what accountability tends to look like when you contract with police more generally. It couldn't look like a district oversight committee with the ability to dismiss a deputy for any of the abuses my colleagues across the district had occasion to recount last year. As a reminder, this ranged from pulling over a professor for driving a car that they found suspiciously fancy to pulling an outright gun on the professor as she was packing up after her night class. LASD's contract with the district states that the disciplining of officers and control over bureau personnel stays with the county. Our oversight committee's powerlessness mirrors the toothlessness of the Civilian Oversight Commission and oversight commissions over police more generally, so they have no reason to budge on this. Accountability wouldn't look like what bureau deputies are fond of suggesting. Body cameras on every deputy recording abuses and generating charges or grounds for dismissal. According to LASD policy, deputies may keep their cameras off whenever they deem it, quote, impracticable unquote, to activate them. And of course, Villanueva's rehiring of disgraced deputies shows he doesn't care about abuses anyway. And we know of so many instances of civil rights violations and police brutality where footage just doesn't matter. These loopholes line up with many others to structure a deadly unaccountability. I'm also reminded of the split-second decision legal standard that shields the deputy who killed Andres Guardado as he lay prone on the ground. Accountability in the wake of that means cutting ties with the sheriffs and any other brutal civil rights violating police. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Julio Tuja?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So thank you, trustees, for having me here today. Again, my name is Julio Tuja, and I teach sociology at Pierce College and have been with the district for about 10 years. Here to speak on the issue of providing campus safety and also the data gathering process used to collect our opinions on how we felt about the services provided on our campus and across the district. I attended the focus group put together by Hillard Hines, and both at this group and in my conversations with colleagues, I've simply just heard way too many stories about folks, students, staff, faculty members, having simply bad experiences with the sheriff's department. People have felt disrespected, intimidated, and in certain situations, felt for their own safety in these interactions. So I look forward to this report that's going to be coming out in a couple of minutes, but I certainly hope that these voices are well represented in that report. In addition to this, having taken the survey, as a social scientist, we get rigorous training on collecting data, and this felt very, very problematic. There were questions that were certainly leading. The way these options for responses were constructed were not neutral in many different ways. So I echo the voices of my colleagues before me in asking you to please disregard this survey as it could have been done better and its results are questionable. Lastly, I hope that the organization that we choose to go with to provide these security services practices community-driven style of policing, one that is based on building strong relationships and collaboration with the members of the community. And it's really important that this organization, that they have a strong record and reputation on civil rights issues so that our community actually does feel safe. Unfortunately, we don't have those things with the sheriff's department. And so we need to move in a new direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Yasmin Pomeroy.
Hey, everyone. Board of Trustees, my name is Yasmin Pomeroy. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I want to speak in reference to the report of Hillard Hines and urge the board to support a transparent process in selecting a public safety organization. I'm a UTLA member and a high school educator where many of my students take classes in Los Angeles community colleges where they're policed all day. Sheriffs do not belong on school campuses. We need a transparent process in selecting a transformed campus safety. Sheriffs do not keep us safe. Police do not keep us safe. They do not prevent crime. And as someone had mentioned, I'm going to echo that research has shown that campuses with school police do not have less crime or less violence. This only increases the school to prison pipeline. With the LACCD having a history of civil rights violations, they have no business being on our campuses. Education has been defunded. Mental health services have been defunded. Support systems have been defunded. While all these important essential services have been defunded, the budget for the Sheriff's Department has increased. Students were not asked to participate in this when our students are the ones that we as educators serve. So I urge the board to be on the right side of history and choose a public safety organization that does not have a violent, racist, and anti-Black history. Thank you.
Thank you. Last one on this topic is Mario Macias. I don't think he's logged on, but I'll see if he raises his hand. Oh, there we go. He's raising his hand. We're going to move him in. Thank you. Okay, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak on this issue. As a librarian, I can tell you that it doesn't take one to know that that survey from the Hillard report is bogus and is biased towards the police. So I don't know what to tell you about that. Even my students and Psychology 74 research methods could tell you how flawed and unreliable that survey already is. So therefore, the whole process should be discarded. Secondly, yeah, the sheriff's department has a history of being racist and of having violations against civil rights. If you are really about equity and against systemic racism, this is one of the very first steps you can take. So I see this as a missed opportunity, and I would love it if you could actually practice all the values that you speak of, especially, you know, after publishing Students' Bill of Rights and all of that. Actually practice those values and put policies into action and show us those effects on our communities who are hurting right now. Our people need jobs. This is a missed opportunity. You could be so creative. You can be so innovative with this opportunity to reform what really means to have campus safety. And once again, campus safety does not mean police and guns. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you for listening.
Okay, that's we're done with the item. We have Jacqueline Irwin in the room. She had initially requested to have me read her comments, but Ms. Jacqueline, did you want to address the board instead?
Thank you. Sorry, it's kind of loud. So I wanted to address the board regarding the collaboration between the Assessor's Office and LACCD on the real estate courses that we'll be launching in the fall. So on behalf of Assessor Prang, I wish to note that LA County Office of the Assessor is pleased to embark upon this exciting program in partnership with LACCD. This is an important step to leveraging the best of both our institutions. And through this collaboration, we build upon our mutual goals to support career growth, expand access to professional development, and provide public service opportunity within our county. We really look forward to expanding our ability to successfully train appraisers for the future needs facing our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're done with the public comment on agenda items.
Okay, sounds good. And with that, we will close public comment and move forward to next item on the agenda, which are reports and recommendations from the board. So first, we're going to go through reports, standing and special committees. Let's kick this this portion of the agenda off with an update from Trustee Vela. If you can please summarize the proceedings of the Budget and Finance Committee that you chaired on June 16th.
Thank you, President Veras. Appreciate the chance to do that. We went and looked over the 2021 year-end balance projection by location at each college. Ms. Jeanette Gordon provided an overview of the 2021 current budget allocation and projected expenditures from unrestricted general fund as of March 31st, 2021. All of the colleges are projecting a positive ending balance for a total of $22 million as a result of the HERP funds that we've all been talking about. We also looked at an internal audit for 21-22. Our audit plan was presented by Mr. Arnold Blanchard, who also looked at the fiscal year 2021-22 audit plan. The item was received and filed, and no questions or comments were done following this item. And then we also looked at our 5-year financial forecast, which obviously included a lot of the HERF funds that we've all been talking about, but more importantly, how we're going to work with the state for the hold harmless portion of us balancing the budget. I'm happy to report that even with that, we're in good shape, and we're looking to working again to increase enrollment. So thank you to Vice President Buena for looking in his committee, as well as I see he just popped up here, Trustee Mike Fong, who's been working really hard at the state and federal and really every level of government to grab those funds for us that are helping us for our 5-year forecast. Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Vela. Next, we have Trustee Fong. If you can give us an update of the proceedings of the Legislative and Public Affairs Committee you chaired on June 16th.
Thank you so much, President Perez, and good afternoon, colleagues and members of the public and LACCD family. And thank you so much to Trustees Vela and Trustee Hoffman for a robust meeting. We had presentations from Leslie Poner on the federal level, from Holland and Knight. She gave us an update that Senator Padilla and Senator Durbin held a committee hearing on the American Dream and Promise Act of 2021, which is a bill that would offer a pathway to citizenship to millions of dreamers and other immigrants with temporary protections. That's a bill that will be continuing to track. We also received information on other work that is happening at the Department of Education, which is Department of Education made an announcement that it will be making changes to the FAFSA form with full simplification of the form occurring in the 2024-2025 award year. And in terms of our federal priorities, we're pushing hard on a number of our priorities. And thank you so much again to Trustees Vela and Hoffman for other leadership at the committee. So that was a quick federal update. At the state level, as Trustee Vela has referenced, we've been pushing hard on our budget priorities. And Mark McDonald from MGI Advocacy Group gave an update on Prop 98 spending, $96.1 billion for this fiscal year. And we also received updates that the May revision was $8.8 billion higher than May revision. We also looked at additional opportunities for our students and faculty around ethics studies. And the Chancellor also provided an update to add language related to ethics studies to make sure that the state legislature, which is very interested in diversifying our community college faculty in many districts and helping out with their fund numbers. Mark McDonald also provided an update on different trailer bill language on the ethics studies piece. And we'll continue to push hard on our priorities at the state level. Dale Shimasaki provided an update from Strategic Education Services. And some of the updates he provided were an update on AB 1040, the bill authored by Assemblymember Almar Suji on ethics studies. Tomorrow is next Wednesday, it'll be in the Senate Higher Education Committee. And thank you so much to my colleagues, to everyone here, and to the Chancellor, Ms. Velos. Chancellor, Ms. Velos met with Chancellor Eloy Oakley, and that went well. And we're continuing to push the legislation with the Board of Governors at their upcoming meeting on July 12th and 13th. We also have been advocating with Assemblymember Medina on AB 101, which is the high school graduation requirement for ethics studies, and that's expected to be referred to Senate Education Committee as well. From Alex Alanis, we have some brief updates on some bills that the district is sponsoring, including Senate Bill 330, authored by Senator Maria Elena Durazo on joint occupancy. That's passed the Senate, and now it's on the Assembly side. We also had good news on AB 1383, authored by Assemblymember Wendy Carrillo, which is the administrative leave sponsored bill, and that bill has been signed by the governor. So thank you to everyone for your work and efforts on that. On the local level, we had updates from Mercury Group on LAUSD collaboration, and thank you to my colleagues, Trustees Vela and Hoffman, for bringing up the past collaboration with LAUSD. That's something that our district will be reaching out to LAUSD and their legislative body for additional potential collaboration. Also, thank you to John and Mercury for their work and efforts around the advocacy around the LA County Board of Supervisors. And then at the local level, we also had an update from Robert Utiaga from Santa Maria Group. Robert provided an update on the Metro board meeting and relayed the Metro Fairless System initiative that our district has championed with Trustee Vela, Trustee Hoffman, President Vetez, all my colleagues here. That was passed unanimously at the May 27th board meeting. Now, and thank you to Trustee Vela for presenting at the May 27th board meeting, for providing comments at that board meeting. And thank you to Trustee Hoffman for her presentation, to Cecile Ben David as well with the Labor Caucus of the Democratic Party. So thank you to Robert Urtiaga for his leadership and efforts, and to everyone for their work and efforts around the Fearless System Initiative. We're working out the final details on that, and we hope to continue to push hard to really provide Fearless System initiatives and transit for our students. And lastly, at our committee meeting, Ms. Velos gave an update on some of our legislative visits, and future items will be looking at potential trip to DC in late September. So we'll keep everyone posted there. Tentatively looking at September 19th to the 22nd. But thank you so much again to my colleagues, Trustee Vela and Trustee Hoffman, for a robust legislative and public affairs committee meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Fong. Next, Trustee Wellna, we have 3 updates from you. Student Success and Institutional Effectiveness Committee, DACA Immigration Task Force, and the Chancellor's Advisory Committee on Mexican American, Central American, and Latino Affairs. Trustee, can you give us updates on those meetings?
Sure. I think DACA, Trustee Vettis, was led this month, thankfully, by Trustee Fong, that couldn't be available. Maybe Trustee Fong could give that update first, just to make sure.
Trustee Fong.
Thank you, President Vettis, and thank you, Vice President Bona. Thank you to everyone here. Thank you, Chair Bona, for your leadership and efforts at the DACA Immigration Task Force and for everyone's leadership there. We gave welcoming remarks on behalf of our Vice President, Trustee Bona. We also talked about how that was the 9th anniversary of President Obama's signing of DACA the week that we had the meeting. We also had a very special guest from the White House, Alita Garcia. Some of you may know her from her work here in the city of Los Angeles about a decade ago. But Alita is now the Senior Immigration Advisor to President Biden and shared her experiences here in Los Angeles. She shared also her experience of meeting with President Biden and the 6 DACA recipients at the White House, actually a couple of weeks ago. And she's going to continue to be a fighter and advocate for us with the Biden administration. And she shared that she believes that she's very grateful to have an administration that is prepared to fight for the DACA community. So we're very honored to have her presence and her leadership at the meeting. And thank you to the Chancellor for giving her a very warm introduction. We also had our student trustee, Karaima Martinez, who moderated a Q&A session along with former student trustee Elias Geronimo, and also Mr. Leonardo Gonzalez, who's now going to UC Berkeley. They shared their stories with Alita Garcia and the committee. And to wrap up the committee, we had amazing updates from our Dream Resource Center liaisons. And thank you so much to all our liaisons for all their leadership and efforts in supporting and advocating for our dreamers each and every day. So we had a really robust meeting, and thank you so much, Chair Buona, for your leadership with the DACA committee. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Buona. So the other 2 committees, or?
Yes, sir. I'll start first with IESS. IESS went from minute to minute. In fact, I think we went over with trustees telling us to move it along because we were so full of information. We went through the West Los Angeles College presented their revised mission and educational master plan. The plan is aligned with the district strategic plan and includes a heavier focus on racial equity, social justice, and the college's guided pathways framework. The plan was developed through a process, data review, and input from the campus community. The committee members recommended that additional efforts be made in the future to include those who may not always participate and allow for anonymous feedback and recommendations on the plan. The committee also asked where specific metrics such as diversity and hiring would be represented. The college president indicated the college annually selects the areas of focus from the plan, and this process would make those expectations clear. The committee recommended the mission and plan for full approval. And student communications next. Associate Vice Chancellor Regalado presented the process for developing and distributing district-wide student communication. The standard for these communications include development by the business user, i.e. admissions and records. Communications are sent to the student's Office 365 email address. Salutation addressed to student if mail merge is used. Tone of letter is meant to be student friendly. Again, this is, just to be clear what this is about. This is about how we as a district communicate with students. The communication content is specific to the topic, brief, maximum of 4 paragraphs. When applicable, embedded links to flyers, petitions, and to specific website pages. Contains sending departments contact information for follow-up. Example of these communications were also shared. The committee expressed a need for the communications to be more student-friendly, and I'll emphasize additional that, more student-friendly, and understanding of how the readers, students, and families would receive information, its tone, and the complexity of the content. It was reported that pre-pandemic, those efforts had begun and have already been renewed in an effort to achieve this direction. The next issue was a pretty big issue. Doesn't sound like it, is the California Community College Chancellor's Office Tax Offset Program. It's one of those names that all of us can memorize real easily. COTOP. The committee was presented a summary of the use of the tax offset program. COTOP is used as a last resort to collect a lot of debt. And just so you know, this presentation was one of the most contentious. Debt, this is about student debt. Debt must be over $500 and older than 2 years. 3 mailed notices are sent to students 30 days apart. The intent to resolve the debt issue before submitting to COTOP. The committee expressed concern about the threatening tone of student notices and requested that the process be reviewed. There was a concern that this would confuse students and prevent future enrollment in LACCD. Staff agreed to look at the COTOP and other related fee processes. I'll add that an additional point is that the committee was really looking at how we could use HERB funding to wipe out the 15,000 students that are under this program and potentially the students that are being prevented from all kinds of stuff because of the COTOP program. And the committee also asked that staff come back in IESS in August to see where we were at with this conclusion. Enrollment update comparing summer 2021 to summer 2019 as of day down -5 of the semester for the district as a whole. Head count is at 90%, duplicated enrollment is at 89%, credit section count is at 104%, enrollment per section is at 85%. Fall enrollment comparison, fall and planning. Fall 21 priority registration started on May 24th, and open enrollment is scheduled for 6/18. The current data is difficult to interpret given the differing start dates for open enrollment, but this should become clearer moving into July and August. Enrollment in classes of different modalities, remote, hybrid, and in-person, are being carefully monitored by both EPIE and the colleges so that additional in-person classes can be open and forwarded by student demand. As of 6/10/21, approximately 24% of classes district-wide were being offered in-person, representing 15% of the total seat capacity. The district-wide enrollment campaign continues with additional efforts to target recent high school graduates in an effort to increase new student enrollment. Efforts continue to target continuing students, applicants who never enrolled, and students who did not return after prior attendance. EPIE and the colleges continue to monitor the impact of COVID-19, public safety guidelines, and class offerings. EPIE will be preparing the annual FTS 320 report in July 2021. 2020 through 21 FTS is currently projected to be approximately 85,025, which is currently 14% lower than the 98,792 in 2019-2020. The committee was presented more details. The committee will be presented more detailed fall comparisons at the August IESS meeting. I think to add to my notes from the committee, this was they're always serious meetings, but this particular IESS on COTOP and the enrollment, it's important for the board to know that we as your representatives on these committees, are very concerned about enrollments, and the Chancellor and I have had additional communications about that, about the relationship between the campus plans and the district plan and what we're going to do But COTOP, I think we were shown a letter that was very, very highly inappropriate, and the communication to the student was extremely bad. Let me just repeat that: extremely bad, really intimidating to our students. And we had a very serious conversation where our chief financial officer and I, for the first time, agreed 100% on how bad the letter was and the communication with our student. So, Mr. President, that on behalf of the committee, that's the report on IESS. May I move forward to the next report? I couldn't hear you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So yesterday we had the second meeting of the Mexican American, Central American, and Latino Affairs Committee, Chancellor's Advisory Committee. We had approximately 41 individuals present. It is available on Zoom as well. We had 2 students from Valley College from the Chicano and Chicano Studies program with Professor Angelita Rodero from LA Pierce College doing the introduction. We had students Melissa Robles and Sylvia Robles who shared their stories at Pierce College within Chicano and Chicano Studies, and students and how they were inspired and how they're moving on and taking additional classes at Cal State Northridge. So that was important. It was a 2-hour meeting. Dean Keller, Dean of Instructional Support, DPIE, presented the latest advancements and challenges the implementation of AB 1416 and the coordination between LACCD and the CSUs. Some important points include, it is very, very important for us to understand that there are challenges right now that are occurring, and we discussed it in that meeting. The LAC submitted 37 unique courses for LACCD for Area F, but only 7 courses were approved. 4 colleges got 0 classes approved, which will require students to take their ethnic studies at a sister college, and let me just say, paying additional tuition for classes that they really shouldn't have to retake. Many courses were rewritten and resubmitting, now waiting for responses and resubmissions. Pierce College resubmissions were denied again, despite being rewritten and exact language represented by CSU. Some courses were approved at one college and denied at another. The LACCD is working with the CSU to smooth out inconsistencies and streamline the process, also preparing for requirements under the new ethnic studies bill. Dr. Keller stressed that the ultimate goal is to have the largest set of courses possible in all 4 specified areas: Native American Studies, African American Studies, AAPI, Chicana and Chicano Studies, Latino Studies. Conversations are ongoing between CSU and the California community colleges. The Q&I discussion was ensued among the different members of the committee with Dr. Keller. So that was important. Maria Velos went through legislative updates with Dale Shimasaki. Let me go through here. Then there was a discussion whether there's going to be an overall Latino graduation ceremony in the following year. There was a few names that were brought up, on what that graduation name will be, and that was discussed at the committee. There was a diverse discussion on diversification of faculty at LACCD. There was discussion about creating anonymous ethnic studies departments that do not compete with each other, focusing on hiring more faculty that students can see themselves in, utilizing mentorship so that new faculty can get that guidance and support, finding more ways for faculty to rise beyond adjunct status to full-time status. The next step for the initiative include creating a smaller work group. There was a broad interest from the Mexican American, Central American, Latino Affairs Committee members to join that work group. Chancellor Rodriguez and myself, Trustee Buena, committed to calling a first meeting as soon as possible. Well, it will be in August, and that would be to make sure that there are sufficient activities and the campuses understand how to access funding for the different Latino heritages that comprise the district and that could create different events throughout the 9 colleges of the district. So, Mr. President, that is a complete report of IESS and the Mexican American, Central American Latino Affairs Committee of the Chancellors.
Thank you, Trustee. Is there any questions? I see Trustee Moreno has a hand up, so let me call on you, Trustee Moreno.
Yes, this question for Trustee Buena. Any discussion in your committee about the difficulty in enrolling in our colleges through the online process. Also, I have a question about, I've been getting numerous complaints about our complex approach to enrolling in our district. But aside from that, I'd like to know if there's any information about where we stand relative to other community colleges in the general area. Our decline is the largest decline I've seen since I've been with the LA Community Colleges from its inception. So I'm wondering, is there any metrics or information about our relative decline to other districts?
Chancellor, is Vice Chancellor?
I think, yeah, Vice Chancellor Corner might be able to answer more specifically, but in my communications with the area, Los Angeles County CEOs, we're all about in the same position with high numbers of 8 to 9 to high teens of enrollment loss over the last year. So it's not, we're not out of the norm. Our numbers obviously are higher because we're a larger district, but from a percentage of enrollments, they're down significantly statewide and nationally, as well as here locally as well. So we're not too far out of the norm. And I would point out, Mr. Moreno, that there are variations within our own district where some colleges are faring better at the moment than others. So that's the overall district average of about 13% down. But there are some of our colleges that are above that and some that are much lower than that.
Well, the reason I asked that, Chancellor, is because prior to the pandemic, we were declining in equally a downward slide. And with the pandemic, this has gotten to the point where it's kind of ridiculous now. My concern, in addition to the massive decline, is also the difficulty many of the people I've come in contact with in their inability to register through our somewhat complex approach. I personally took on the responsibility of doing that, try to enroll at East LA College, I might add. And then I also attempted to enroll at Santa Monica, and there was substantial difference in terms of the difficulty and complexity of the process. Perhaps it stems from the fact we try to enroll everyone in the district as opposed by college. But I do think this is an area of inquiry that needs to take place, because we can claim that the reduction is due to some outside factors when in fact we may be turning people away unintentionally by virtue of the difficulties they have. Also, knowing more specifically what the decline is relative to the general feeling about what it might be would be a good idea. What is exactly the decline in Santa Monica and also Pasadena and some of our local colleges? That would be valuable for us to look at in hard figures.
Mr. Moreno, just so you're aware, and the public is also aware, we'll be taking a little bit of a deeper dive at the July 17th board mid-year check-in, and this is one of the areas that we're taking a deeper dive where we could unpack some of these areas that you're describing. I agree with your general tone and observation.
And one other thing I just want to add, we are going to be approving a number of contracts with outside agencies, consultant firms for recruitment purposes. I trust these same contracts were in place prior, and our precipitous decline does not seem to be supported by the activities we have undertaken through these various consulting firms. I would suggest there be a little bit more critical analysis of whether or not we should spend that additional money without the massive decline that we have, or with the massive decline that we have.
Chancellor, I know we're in the report section here and appreciate Mr. Moreno's comments. General Counsel, I imagine that's why you're raising your hand. You wanted to.
Yeah, to President Bettis, I would just say Trustee Moreno raises excellent points. It seems like he's raising points to point to maybe agendizing this item, where you could actually have folks report back to the points that Trustee or the questions that Trustee Moreno has raised. So we may want to just at the time period where we're looking at future agenda items, have this, and then we can have folks like Vice Chancellor Corner and others report back to the questions that Trustee Moreno has raised.
Trustee Bettis?
Okay. Yes, Trustee.
Since the question was addressed to me, I do want, I understand that the tone, and also don't disagree with Trustee Moreno. I think the issue of enrollment is at every IESS, and that's why we've pushed the agenda onto more in depth. So I just wanted to make sure Trustee Moreno knew that.
Okay, thank you. Sounds good. Okay, well, let me move on with Trustee Henderson. We have the Chancellor's Advisory Committee on Black African American Student Affairs that you chaired on the 24th. Can you give us an update there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I have to bring my notes back up. The Advisory Committee on Black and African American Student Affairs met on Thursday, June 24th. The Chancellor provided an overview on the 9 colleges serving as COVID testing and vaccination sites. We discussed the decline in student enrollment for the summer and gave a few updates on the return to campus and the schedule of office openings, as students would like to know when they'd be able to visit campuses for support. Mr. Steve Henderson and Mr. Dale Shimasaki from Strategic Education Services noted that there is no real update on legislation. The status of legislation that LACCD is sponsoring and or watching. We have our eye on SB 17 and AB 1040, but they also highlighted to our collective delight, LACCD's efforts in the fight for increased K-14 funding and how the LACCD was a loud voice in securing some of that funding for us. Dr. Nairi Berry, who is the AAOI coordinator, announced the Welcome Black Back to School event that is scheduled for Wednesday, September 8th from 3 to 6 p.m. at West LA College. Please spread the word. And Vice Chancellor Ryan Corner reported on the AAOI 2021-2022 budget. We have budgeted just over $650,000. Much of it will be going towards student outreach and recruitment, leadership development, and student activities, such as the Welcome Black event, the Black graduation, a series of workshops, and Juneteenth, just to name a few for next year. And most importantly to our committee, there was a much needed roundtable discussion in which attendees reflected on the impacts of the past year and looked ahead with mindful planning. The consensus was that there needs to be a prioritization of student success and diversity in hiring, as well as making racial equity and diversity work a movement, not a time and a moment. The meeting closed with suggestions for future actionable items and my encouragement to members to support and attend the advisory committees for LGBT, Asian American and Pacific Islander, and Mexican American, Central American, and Latin American committees to ensure that we appropriately address the intersectionality of our Black and African American identifying students. The next meeting of the Black and African American Advisory Committee will be on Thursday, August 26th at 2 p.m. I would like to thank the members of the committee for their steadfast participation and dedication, and also for Trustee Andra Hoffman, who is becoming a regular attendee of our meetings, for her continued allyship and support of Black and African American student issues. Mr. President, so ends my report.
Okay, thank you, Trustee.
President Bettis, really quick.
Yes, Trustee Vella.
I'm sorry, I'm going out of line. I just wanted to thank Trustee Henderson for the efforts on intersectionality. It's been really received well at the LGBT committee. Obviously this summer we had our Lavender graduation and Pride celebrations. So we're gonna have one soon. And so I just wanted to thank her for, not only inviting and, making us part of the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, with that, I believe that covers all of our standing and special committees. I think so far it's the longest part of our meeting, so appreciate your depth and detail. And I do want to remind everyone that you do have the options of also putting some of the very specific details, that because I know there's a little bit of a dialogue and questions here in the written report format, and some of them are submitted that might be helpful for a few of the colleagues that wanted to ask very specific questions. So with that, we'll close that item on the agenda and move forward with board travel authorizations. Colleagues, may I have a motion and a second for item H2?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. If I can have a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Brona,
Yes.
Trustee Fong,
Yes.
Trustee Henderson,
Yes.
Trustee Hoffman,
Yes.
Trustee Moreno,
Yes.
Trustee Vela,
Yes.
Trustee Vettis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, we're on to resolutions. Our resolution for the month is a classified employees retirement. It's listed there. We have 2 individuals with 23 and 24 years of service. So thank you for all those years of service. And we appreciate their time, but now they get to retire. So with that, colleagues, can I get a motion and a second on this item?
So moved.
A motion by Trustee Bella,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Fong. Thank you both. And if the board secretary will do the roll call vote.
Trustee Brona,
Yes.
Trustee Fong,
Yes.
Trustee Henderson,
Yes.
Trustee Hoffman,
Yes.
Trustee Moreno,
Yes.
Trustee Vela,
Yes.
Trustee Vettis.
Yes, thank you. Okay, next we'll move forward to reports from the Chancellor. And Chancellor, I know we had a number of public comments related to the item that's here. So if in your report and if in the presentation that's given, if the concerns that if possible, the concerns that were raised can be noted and incorporated into your responses and answers, that would be much appreciated. So with that, let me hand it over to you, and then we'll kick off your report now.
Okay, thank you, Board President Vettis, members of the board, colleagues. If Chris, if you could flip up the PowerPoint, I would appreciate the help guide a couple of topics right before we get into the main component of the Chancellor's report for this afternoon. First and foremost, I wanted to, that photo there, just by the way, in case you're curious, that's a women's soccer coach at LA Harbor College, Arturo Caballero, and they're featured on the statewide, the Community College Athletic Association newsletter this month, because not only are they wonderful student athletes, but they're also academic honors students, all of them. So we recognize the true word of the meaning of student athlete and recognize Coach Caballero and his scholar athletes there at Harbor College. Moving to the next slide, here's what I'll go over today. I wanted to point out once again, as we do every single month, there is a Chancellor's Monthly that we put out. I'll talk in a moment about what's in there. I'll give just a very brief update on what's going on with COVID-19 and our vaccination work, talk about our fall re-engagement plan, and then get to the bulk of the presentation today, our report to the Board of Trustees on the assessment. So in this month's monthly, you will see a recap and links to the graduation celebrations for this wonderful class of 2021. And we've got links and lots of information on public health emergency and recovery that is going on, that continues to change, be dynamic. So we inform the entire campus communities about what it is that's going on. A little bit more about the enrollment and marketing conversation that we just had. We celebrate the wonderful gifts from both the Kaiser Foundation and the Leonetti O'Connell Foundation to incentivize our students and their families to be vaccinated. Some special notes, and then of course, in all the different ways in which the district has been in the news, online, in front of a camera, speaking to the benefits of higher education and to LACCD. And you see an ad there touting our College Promise program for this fall. You'll see some free information sessions that are one is coming up on July the 15th. That's just one example. If we look towards the status, as you know, June 15th, we reopened, quote unquote, per the governor's orders. And what that means is that most of the health orders and protocols that we've been following for the last several months, even though they've been evolving for those of us who are in this Institutes of Higher Education category, they're now retired, meaning that it's opened up for more opportunities moving through this summer. So we'll align the remaining orders from the federal, CDC, State Health, Cal OSHA, and County. So that continues to make sure that we have a clear, concise alignment between all what sometimes could be conflicting health orders. We continue to keep all of our district employees updated. In doing so, because of the reopening, we are demobilizing, and there's a formal process to do that, both from the Emergency Operations Center and the campus-based ICCs. And clearly, you've heard a little bit of this earlier. We're keeping a very, very close watch on both the Delta and Lambda variants, and we'll mobilize and adjust to anything that we need. Our colleges are doing an excellent job with more than 60 VAX clinics this past month. I mentioned the incentives for students, gift cards and bookstore credits, really trying to ensure that all who would like to be vaccinated could be vaccinated. You'll recall that a month ago, we had a conversation with the board about whether this district would mandate vaccinations, and the staff recommendation was to not mandate, but indeed to encourage, facilitate, and incentivize. And we are indeed doing that. And please know that there are more clinics planned for July. As we look to fall 2021, the revisions to the health orders that I spoke to a moment ago really does open multiple pathways for increased on-site instruction and student services. Our staff are now returning in a phased way throughout the summer, but it is important to note that we are indeed open. We indeed never closed during the last 16, 17 months. You'll see there are no restrictions on class sizes or social distancing. Indoor masking and screening is still required. We are phasing in. We continue to talk very openly and closely with our employee groups as they're assisting us in this transition to in-person instruction. And as was mentioned in one of the reports, we're at about 26 to 30% online 26 to 36% in-person instruction for the fall. We're working towards an environment that we've stated 50% would be our goal. We're not there yet, but there's still opportunities to do that. Lastly, Mr. Vettis and members of the board, this is the bulk of our presentation. Back in December of 2020, the board took an action and gave direction. The action the board gave was to reconstitute the campus safety and security contract with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department that was initially a 6-month, but could be extended to a 12-month contract that is being exercised now. It is being exercised because we needed the time to engage in a campus safety and security assessment, and then informing a open bid RFP that would provide for our campus safety and security services moving forward 2022 and beyond. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our presenters from the Hillard Hines group here. I think I will start with Chad McGinty, who was the lead on this particular project, and Rob Davis is also with us from the Hillard Hines group. We asked them to assess our campus safety and security around the district, all 9 of our colleges and the ESC, to give a sort of a search of documents, a walk around, conduct interviews, conduct surveys, and get a real assessment as to what our risk factors are, our vulnerabilities are, and to lay out a set of recommendations that would make us a premier campus with respect to safety and security. So that is the introduction. So Mr. McGinty, Mr. Davis, welcome to LACCD. I will turn the floor now to you. I know that you also have a PowerPoint that we're going to load for you, and I'll turn it over to you. And then after the presentation, we will entertain questions. Mr. Vettis from the Board of Trustees. Mr. McGinty, welcome.
Thank you, Chancellor, Board President Veras, and distinguished members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity Crystal, if I could ask, are you going to advance the slides for us, or shall I do a screen share? We can do this either way.
Whichever way you prefer is fine.
Yeah, Crystal, if you don't mind, if you could just advance to the next slide, and Rob Davis will introduce our team and our company. Thank you, Crystal.
Again, thank you very much. I too would like to thank the board as well as Chancellor Rodriguez for having us complete this assessment, or at least doing this assessment. You know, this is a very important time in law enforcement, not just for university campuses, but in every single city, town, state across this country. So it's very important work that you're doing. We applaud you for taking the effort to move forward, to explore what it is that's taking place on your campus in terms of law enforcement. We've been very honored to be able to help provide these services. Just by way of background, I lead the law enforcement consulting group for Hilliard Heinz, which is a firm that was just acquired by the Jensen Hughes company a couple of years ago, but I've been doing this now for upwards of 10 years. Just by quick background, some of the cities that we've been involved in terms of doing assessments. Most recently, we just completed the Louisville, Kentucky assessment, which came about as a result of the Breonna Taylor tragedy. We're currently working in Minneapolis, assisting that city assess the response that they gave to the riots that were occurring as a result of the George Floyd tragedy as well. But we've also been in cities like San Francisco, Oakland, Miami, Fort Worth, Boulder, Colorado, Denver, Colorado, Salem, Oregon, Seattle, Washington. We've also been heavily involved in California. We've done projects in Corona, Fontana, La Mesa, Lancaster, Riverside. Most recently, we've done quite a few of those just in the last 3 years. But we've also done work at a variety of universities across the country. We've been involved at the University of North Carolina with 17 campuses. Part of that assessment at the University of North Carolina included assessing what was taking place at the University of Texas system-wide, as well as taking a look at the Indiana University there in Bloomington. We've also completed studies for the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, the University of California in San Francisco, and the University of Rhode Island. So just by way of background, a few of the places we've been involved in, which helps us as we are comparing and contrasting what's taking place in any of those entities with what it is we're doing with any current clients. And again, we do thank you so much, not only for your willingness to be able to move forward with this, but also for the support that we received and from so many of you and the other presidents of the various campuses and the students and faculty who really opened up their arms to us and allowed us to be able to interview them and talk to them and really find out what their perceptions were about what's taking place with law enforcement on the campuses. Forgive me a little bit, I'm losing my voice, which is why I'll now turn the PowerPoint presentation over to Chad, who will walk us through the slides. Chad?
Thank you, Rob. Crystal, could you advance the next slide, please? And unfortunately, Rob, are you seeing the next slide? I'm still
yes,
seeing
I am.
yeah,
and maybe if you could just, maybe if you've got your version, you can just follow along on your computer if it's not coming up. But we
okay, I think we're set. All right, well, thank you, Rob. As Chancellor Rodriguez said, my name is Chad McGinty. I was the project manager. Appreciate the opportunity to present our findings. By way of background, I've been with Hilliard Heinz about 4 years. I work not only in our security risk management, but also our law enforcement consulting. I'm a former law enforcement officer, executive with the Ohio State Highway Patrol, retired as a field operations major, where I had the opportunity to have oversight of patrol operations statewide for a department of about 1,600 sworn officers. Also special operations of SWAT team, governor's executive protection, explosive detection canines. And in the state police realm, we work closely with universities throughout the state of Ohio, most notably the Ohio State University at both the main campuses and the branch. So appreciate the opportunity to provide a background. And we're going to walk right into to what we did. Chancellor alluded to some of this already. We did an extensive document review. Our team looked at thousands of pages of policies, procedures, plans, records, memos. We conducted a high-level threat and vulnerability assessment of the campus, the district office, and satellite facilities. And what we looked at was the neighboring community that surrounds the facilities and the campuses, looked at crime statistics around and on campus, looked at perimeter security measures, looked to see what that looked like in terms of physical barrier, visual barriers, access control measures, be that electronic access control measures or hard keys. Looked at what surveillance cameras looked like. How many were there? Where were they located? What was the operational status of the cameras? Looked at lighting. We heard a lot about lighting. We looked at communication. communication, both verbal and written, what the notification processes look like in terms of an incident, and then what was the formal notification, i.e. reports. Looked at staffing levels, obviously plans and processes. Next slide, please. We did a lot of stakeholder outreach. Our team was comprised of African American, Hispanic, and white women and men, current and former law enforcement executives, attorneys, human resource professionals, and project managers. We had contact with hundreds of people through community forums and focus groups. On the community forums, we held 11, one for each of the 9 campuses, one for the district office, and one for students only, specific to here students. We conducted 8 focus groups, including labor unions, the sheriff's office personnel, and administrative personnel from the district. Conducted dozens of individual interviews. And as alluded to with our public comment, we conducted a survey which was accessed by over 7,000 individuals. Next slide, please. We reviewed the sheriff's office campus calls for service to determine workload. Part of the project that we did was a staffing study. Unfortunately, the data that we would hope to find and that we traditionally find in an assessment like this, we didn't have available. And we'll talk about that more in depth. The CAD, the computer aided dispatch data set, was incomplete and inconsistent. And the records from the sheriff's station is kind of universally used among the campus community. There was a variety of record keeping taking place there. So we didn't have a clear picture of exactly what it is that the deputies are doing, the sheriff security officers are doing, and what their calls for service look like. So and more notably, the data sets lack community-oriented tasks. Some things that we would expect to see in this environment would be, how often are the campus community asking for a safety escort to the parking lot from a building? How often are they asking for assistance with possibly unlocking their car or any type of assistance? We didn't find that type of information. So we'll talk more on that, but that really was problematic for us as we tried to determine the workload. We researched and compared other campus security models. And I think it's important to note at this point that last year changed a lot of things in the country for a lot of agencies. And there's a very broad discussion that's taking place in communities all across the nation on what is the role of police. What should police officers be doing? And we certainly applaud the district for going into this assessment and asking some of those questions. Is it appropriate to have law enforcement on our college campus? Is it appropriate to have an armed officer on our campus? A lot of agencies their communities are asking those same questions. I will tell you that when we look through the comparisons that we had, if there's anybody that says they have the answer, they have the perfect security process or procedure at a campus environment, they're probably continuing to evaluate based on the changes that May of 2020 in Minneapolis brought to all of us. They're still evaluating what that looks like. So what was working in April and early May of last year may not be quite as successful now. So that proved to be somewhat problematic as well. As I mentioned, we examined crime data on and around the campuses, and we heard over and over again that campuses are quote unquote a bubble of safety. We heard that quite frequently, that the level of crime on the campuses is relatively low, particularly when you look at the area that's around some of the campuses. There's high crime levels, as much as sometimes 11 times the national average around some of these environments. So the crime on campus is relatively low. Next slide, please. As far as the sheriff's office, we assessed their mission and values. Looked at the bureau operations and the campus operations. How do they function as a unit, and then how do they function on the individual campuses? We looked at their communications, dispatching. We'll talk more about this, but dispatching was a concern. Dispatching leads to the lack of data that we had hoped that we would find. We looked at radio interoperability, emergency communications, and a notification process. Be that an incident or just routine information. What does that look like? We certainly looked heavily at their training. Training is huge right now. That's a national discussion as well. We looked at, were they in compliance with mandatory California post training, peace officer standards and training? Were they in compliance there? Are they receiving mental health crisis awareness and response training? And we examined the differences. And this is worthy of note. There are differences in the training for the deputies and the sheriff security officers. So we looked at the training for both of those work groups. Next slide, please. What we were told, what we found is generally the individuals that we spoke with in our focus groups, in our forums, in our individual interviews, and we heard from in surveys, are supportive of LASD, and more importantly, they're supportive of the concept of security on the campus. However, we heard in almost all of those instances that they want more. They want community engagement. They want that community-oriented policing model, and they're not receiving that to the level that they want that. They want that to exist on the campus. We heard a lot about mental health crisis response, and there were a number of individuals that talked about what role civilian counterparts can play in that, whether that is a partnership between sworn law enforcement and medical clinicians, civilians, or is it just to have a civilian group that responds? But mental health crisis was big. We certainly heard about armed officers and the potential for a hybrid model. We heard time and time again that quite honestly, there is a threat of an active shooter incident that's very real. A lot of people talk about that and they want an armed officer there, but they're not sure that everybody has to be armed. They like the idea of some type of a hybrid approach where you have somebody that's armed that can neutralize a potential threat, but you have other individuals that are not. Already mentioned a primary threat is an active shooter incident. The primary concern overwhelmingly what was individuals experiencing homelessness. And we learned that there's a wide range of individuals. There's individuals that have warrants for crimes. There's individuals that are committing crimes on campus. And there's other individuals that may in fact be a student that's experiencing homelessness, and they're taking advantage of an opportunity to engage in an educational experience with the college. So there is a vast range. We heard time and time again that the campus community wants more patrols. And we certainly heard that from one of in the public or the public comment tonight, is that they don't want to see these officers in patrol cars driving around campus looking at students, faculty, and staff. They want them out. They want them out where they're accessible. They want them conducting foot patrols. They want to see them on bikes and in golf carts where they can engage with the campus community. And certainly the focus there is on night classes. They want more coverage, more accessibility to those individuals during the nighttime. Next slide, Crystal. They want less formal uniforms. And we heard more of this from the students than we did from any other group per se, that sometimes there can be a level of intimidation with the formal uniform of both the deputies and the sheriff's security officers. So they would value a less formal uniform, perhaps a polo and some khakis, something along that line to dial down the formal uniform. Training's big. We certainly appreciate that the campus community identified the value of training, and they want the officers, be that security or sworn officers on campus, to have that level of training. Better communication. We heard that time and time again. And that focuses more on perception. It's important that the campus community understands what the sheriff's office is doing, why they're doing what they're doing. And on the other side of that is that the sheriff's office understands the needs and the desires of the campus community. So a better communication on both sides. Better accountability for people that are on campus, understanding that it's an open environment, that there are individuals from the general public that seek to exercise, walk their dogs, take walks on the campus. That's great. But we heard from many individuals that they would like to see better accountability for individuals on the campus. And certainly security technologies in access controls, in the lighting, and the surveillance cameras. We heard that quite a bit. That sometimes somebody is looking for a recording of an incident, and then they find that the camera is not operational. We heard individuals that were uncomfortable going to a parking structure because there weren't adequate lights. And we already covered the less public access to the campus. Understanding, again, it's an open environment. You want that campus to be available to the public. Next slide, please. So what we found is that the assessment provided valuable insight. You know, we certainly went into this with some thoughts about what we might find. And quite honestly, what we found from the security risk management, from the security technologies in the process, we found things that are not inconsistent with what we find with a number of our clients. So while we will walk through and identify some issues, and the Chancellor mentioned there's a number of recommendations in the report, these are not inconsistent with what we find in the work that we do every day with clients across the nation. What we did find was some inconsistencies with the law enforcement function that, quite honestly, we didn't expect to see. We do staffing studies with agencies across the nation. As Rob said, we work with agencies as few as maybe 10 officers to thousands of officers. And we just haven't encountered, our team collectively has not encountered this level of void in the data and the information that's available. So certainly the assessment provided great insight for us and to share with the Chancellor, the district, and the Board of Trustees. We think it would be most beneficial to develop a strategic security plan. Now, obviously, you'll have a security provider, whoever that may be, but it's important that you establish your own strategic security plan, that you develop where you want to go. What is your focus? What are the milestones that you want to reach? When do you want to reach those? And more importantly, who is in charge of that? Who is assigned to own that task and see that through to completion? Very notable. You need to implement a district-wide 24/7 security operations center with centralized dispatching. What is occurring right now is inconsistent with what we see, not only as a best practice, but standard practice for law enforcement agencies across the nation. What we find is that there's a void. There's not always a dispatcher. There's not always somebody to take that call. The calls for service are not being accurately recorded. What we would expect to see is, for example, if an individual is assaulted in a parking garage, there's a time of call. Then there's a time when the officer is dispatched to that call. We would next look for when does that officer arrive? And then how much time does the officer spend with that victim, investigating, working through that, and then ultimately when they clear and what the disposition is. We didn't have that data set. Very, very, very minimal information was available to us. And in a staffing study, when you're attempting to find the level of officers that are needed to carry out the obligated tasks of the environment they work in, you need those times, and they just were not there. So a centralized security operations center with centralized dispatching would give you the visibility of that data. It would increase the safety of the officers. When an officer is responding to a call for service, somebody knows where that officer is and how long they've been there. It improves your emergency response, again, increases your visibility, increased accountability. You know where your officers are at all times and what they're doing. And lastly, can't stress this enough, is the data analysis. You know what's happening on a day-to-day basis with each of your officers in that environment. Looking at the Security Operations Center part of that, it gives you the opportunity to control your electronic access control, surveillance cameras. You have all of that in one location. So if there's an incident that occurs at Pierce College, you can immediately link into the surveillance cameras at Pierce College and begin an increased oversight of that situation. We find there's an opportunity to standardize emergency management response. There's an individual that is charged with emergency safety and emergency services. That's one individual for an institution that has 230,000 students, 9 campuses. One individual, we don't see that as sustainable nor realistic for that individual to keep up with that workload. That individual was working towards standardizing plans, but obviously COVID has impacted that progress, as it has with a number of things. When we talk about standardizing emergency management response, we're looking for a template that each college uses. and a standard process so that every college is the same, albeit there's going to be unique characteristics that are included in a plan, but the process is standardized. The individuals that touch that plan and facilitate that plan, execute the plan, if you will, is standardized. Already covered investing in safety and emergency services. It's just not realistic to expect one person to handle the safety and emergency services for the entire district. The next slide, please, Crystal. Implement minimum standards for campus security measures. One of the things we found is that there's some inconsistencies across the campuses. We learned that in some situations, a disturbance with a student is handled by calling the sheriff's station and dispatching a deputy or sheriff security officers, while at another campus, maybe that doesn't happen. It's handled by faculty. An individual that's experiencing homelessness on one campus may be treated inconsistently with a person experiencing homelessness on another campus. So certainly there's some benefit to standardizing the response procedures that you're expecting from your security provider in those situations. Standardized performance metrics. We talked a little bit about this. The community policing measurement isn't there. We're not seeing that. And it's big. We heard that over and over and over again, that we want more of our police. We heard that from our public comment. They want that community-oriented policing model. They want the security provider to be engaged with the campus community. So how do we measure that? If what gets measured is what gets done. And we're not measuring what it is that is related to community policing now. So if we're not measuring that, it's very difficult for the district to determine whether or not they're being successful. And we find that to be incredibly important as we move forward. As the district looks at the next security provider, how are we going to evaluate what it is they're doing? Are they truly providing that community-oriented policing model in performance metrics and a standard reporting format, not an annual report, perhaps a week or a twice monthly report where we're getting up-to-date information on what's happening. For example, if we ask for student safety escorts, if they requested escorts 80 times, safety escorts 80 times in a 30-day period, and only 65 of those were granted, what happened to the other 15? We don't want to wait till the end of the year and find those stats in an annual report. We want increased visibility of what's going on the campus. Implement a report management system. We find that the process that's in place, quite honestly, is somewhat archaic for the times. We would see that an automated report management system with increased notifications and accessibility across the district would absolutely be beneficial. And we would certainly look for that to provide visibility for risk management in the legal department, so that they can identify patterns and trends and mitigate risk. Right now, what's happening, we don't have a standardized notification process of an incident. And in many occasions, we're learning that risk management and the general counsel is not learning of some of these incidents, where there obviously could be a benefit to identify some issues that could be addressed through increased training, policies, procedures, et cetera. Next slide. The majority of stakeholders, as I alluded to, are supportive of the LASD services on campus. We learned that through not only through our forums, but in focus groups, in our individual interviews, dozens of interviews, in our survey. Everything that we reached, that we touched, indicated that the majority of individuals are supportive of the services of the community. Now, that's not to say that they're satisfied. They're supportive, but they want more. They voice their concerns for improvement. They want more community engagement. Can't focus on that enough. We heard that over and over again. They want more. They want that engagement. They want to see more patrols. They don't want to see officers sitting in the sheriff's station, and they don't want to see officers looking through the windshield and side windows of a patrol cruiser at people walking around the campus. They want them engaged. They want them moving around. They want them to increase that level of safety, more visibility, better communication. They want to understand, again, they want to understand what the sheriff's office is doing. If they tell them they can't do something, they want more. They want an explanation. Why? Why can't you do what it is that I've asked you to do? Less formal uniforms, we touched on that. Again, the majority desire some level of armed officers, not all, but some level of armed officers, maybe one, maybe a couple that are available to neutralize a threat. Armed encounters, again, were the primary concern, and a small but vocal opposition to LASD. Now, when we engaged in our survey, we worked with the educational programs and institutional effectiveness group to develop our survey. We looked at a number of different questions, and there's a lot of information contained in the report. We focused on the autonomy. As a company, we have a policy of non-attribution. We don't quote individuals. We don't list individuals by name in our report. So we seek that autonomy to protect the privacy and the autonomy of the information and the individuals we get. We find that if we ask for information up front, that sometimes that can have what we would call a chilling effect on the respondents' information. We want them to feel free to come forward and share information with us. So that's the focus that we took going into this. We wanted to provide that level of privacy so that they could give us as much information as possible. We've provided a data pedigree statement, and obviously following our survey, we looked at a back-end review to see, we found that over 92% of the survey respondents came from a unique IP address. So some of the things that we found as we looked through the survey results, that females were the largest respondent group, as were Hispanic and Latinos. Students were more heavily represented than any of the other groups, be that staff, faculty, or administrators. And those individuals that declared in the survey as multiracial or multi-ethnicity, and those that declared non-binary were less accepting of the sheriff's office and the procedures on campus. Blacks and Hispanic, Latino, and males were more accepting. Similarly, Blacks and Hispanic and Latinos and males report that the LASD is more effective at building positive relationships on campus than do white respondents and other genders. The faculty and staff feel less safe on campus than the students and administrators. And finally, we provided a list of options. Looking forward, looking at the future, what is it that you would like to see? We ask this in our community forums, and we ask it in the survey. We gave them a number of options. Over 76% of the respondents list their preferred security services provider as LASD over other options available. Next slide, please. So what we found in our oversight of the district's involvement is that we're encouraging them in the near term to establish a framework for security oversight. We don't have visibility of what's happening in the day-to-day operations on the campus. For 20 years, you've had a security provider that's been providing a service, and over the period of time, your charge is an educational experience. Their charge is to provide security. And I think what we have seen is maybe a little bit of a disconnect where the district isn't quite as engaged and doesn't have the level of visibility that we would encourage you to have. We think security director's position and the appropriate staff to establish ownership and to understand really what's happening on a day-to-day basis on those campuses. Greater accountability for the officers. What are they doing with their time and what is happening on each of our campuses? Routine reporting. Report that back. We want to capture those times. We want to know what time they got called for service, what time they got there, how long it took them to respond. We heard that in some of our community outreach, that they wouldn't expect it would take a deputy or a sheriff security officer as long as it does for them to get to a call for service. We want to be able to track that. We want to see that in routine reporting. Evaluate and adjust your newly implemented practices. We're looking at a community-oriented policing model. Let's adjust the performance metrics and then look at those. Is it truly delivering what it is we thought it was going to deliver? Is it appropriate for our campus environment? Establish clear processes for our security technologies. That would be access control and cameras. Next slide, please. So when we talk about that clear ownership of security technologies, audits, we heard that there sometimes is some confusion on who is responsible for auditing the technologies. We want to know who has access, who is on the access control list, who can get into these buildings, who is auditing that list to make sure that the appropriate individuals have access, and maybe somebody that has been terminated, suspended, is no longer with the district, doesn't still have access. Cameras, who's responsible for auditing those cameras to make sure that they're being effectively maintained? If I am the vice president of administrative services on a campus, I certainly want to know who is going around looking, and with what frequency are they looking at all of the surveillance cameras and providing a report to me of what cameras are operational and what aren't. And then when we look at maintenance and repairs, what does that chain look like? What does the communication look like? As that VP of Administrative Services, how many cameras are down? Who has it been reported to? And how quickly can I expect that that situation is going to be resolved and the camera will again be operational? We found that there's some confusion amongst the sheriff's office and the individuals at the college level on who actually owns those technologies. We think there's an opportunity to prioritize security technologies based on the information you have at hand. With Build LACCD, you've got a plan to roll out door lock mechanisms and security cameras across the campuses. Maybe there's an opportunity to look at, does it make more sense to prioritize putting different technology at a specific campus or in a specific location? Maybe to move away from the standard plan that you have in place to address some anomalies that are occurring on the campus. Again, adopt a standardized communication plan, verbal and written. What does it look like when an incident occurs on our campus? Who is reporting that? Does the team lead report it to the sergeant, to then the lieutenant and the captain reports it to the district? Does the captain report it to the VP of Administrative Services? If I'm at the district, who am I going to call if I need information? That needs to be standardized so that if you're calling the VP of Administrative Services, you know that you're going to get the best information. We think there's definitely some benefit to standardizing that. And again, the frequency, the content, everything involved in that communication process with routine reporting and incident, emergency, or crisis reporting. Standardize that process. Next slide, please. In conclusion, LACCD is taking a critical step forward. They've done this assessment. We find that they're doing, again, what I've mentioned a lot of agencies across the nation are doing, and they're listening to their communities. The campus community is speaking, and they want a seat at the table. They want that community-oriented policing model, and certainly the district is moving in that direction. We've already talked about increase the day-to-day insight and oversight. We need to know what's occurring on those campuses. What are the deputies and the sheriff's security officers doing on a daily basis? What is their time accounted? What are they doing with their time? What's our accountability look like? Security Operations Center is a must. Quite honestly, without centralized dispatching, it was just problematic at best. We spent hundreds of hours trying to analyze data. Unfortunately, we can't come back and tell you time spent. We can tell you that Pierce College has a call, 2 calls a day. Southwest has a call every 4 days. We find that's not realistic. There are some things that are not being reported, and centralized dispatching would fix that. You'd have consistency in your calls. You would have greater awareness of what's going on. For the officer side, a substantial increase in the safety and accountability of the officers. Data collection, obviously, and the ability to monitor technology, monitor and impact access control and surveillance cameras. Standardize your processes, develop those consistent metrics and processes, and leverage security technology. So what does all that mean? In our report, in our second key finding is that right now, at this moment, we don't find that it's advantageous for the district to move to a different security provider. There are things, so many things that you can work towards to establish a more robust framework. So you have increased visibility. You have developed more effectiveness and efficiency in your process to truly understand what any security provider is doing on the campus. So we would encourage you to work towards the recommendations that we have provided in the report as you look towards moving to a new multi-year contract. Secure those processes, build that framework as you look towards a new security provider, again, in a multi-year contract.
And Chad, I just wanted to underscore something you said. That is that, Chad has spent a lot of time explaining that there was a lot of missing data that we typically would see at other universities or in local law enforcement, state agencies, et cetera. Remember that LASD is providing law enforcement services to well over 40 contract cities. And it's not as if the data that Chad is explaining here that is needed isn't something that all of those cities are asking for and or are receiving. For example, we can be in a contract city and we find in LA County, and we'll find that there's some level, like a captain or somebody of a command level presence that will be giving a monthly or a quarterly report or something to a city council, giving them the exact data. So I just wanted to underscore the fact that what Chad is explaining is necessary, not only to understand what's currently happening, but what you might need if you wanted to move forward and look at other options. It's not something that is unusual to ask for, nor is it something that's not typically provided. So I just didn't want to make it sound like, that sounds like something very unusual. This is something that's very common that even the LA Sheriff's Department is providing to other cities.
Thank you, Rob. Chancellor, appreciate the opportunity to present the report, and Board President Veras, any questions?
Thank you, Chad. Chancellor, can you frame the process here, and then I'm going to go around and give each trustee an opportunity to ask questions or make some comments.
Yes, thank you. And Mr. McGinty and Mr. Davis, thank you so much. Excellent report, thorough. You did exactly what we asked you to do, to take a deep dive and to give us a framework for building, developing an excellent organization as it relates to campus safety and security. I've seen and heard the presentation before in my briefing. I appreciate the direct candor, the expertise that has been engaged in extracting the insights that you have provided for us. We have some work to do, clearly, some work to do. I wanted to make that statement clear in public. Now, trustees, what we will do is that we will simulate the recommendations, finalize the report, receive any additional direction from you this evening, prioritize the recommendations, and then start to get to work with building some of the architecture, infrastructure, so that when the RFP is indeed posted, it is informed, it is well positioned, and frankly, can be attractive to an organization, a law enforcement or policing or campus safety and security outfit that would have a level of expectation of the kind of environment that they will receive. So over the next couple of months, we will simulate the recommendations, prioritize them, and then resource them so that we can build a strong foundation. The results of the survey and the assessment, I should say, let me restate that. Results of the assessment will inform how we will write an open bid RFP. And we'll look for some support to do that so that we can articulate our clear expectations, articulate the clear values of this district, inform the RFP by the voices of those who took time to either drop in a survey result or participate in a focus group or be interviewed individually, and to ensure that those voices, those sentiments, those expectations of campus safety and security are indeed informed and in the DNA of the RFP. The RFP is one that will take several months to once posted and then we will bring together a group of people who will review the RFPs, make a recommendation that I will bring to you ultimately. So we're still about 6 to 9 months away from the completion of the process that began back in December of 2020. We'll keep the board informed. We will accelerate this. We will move with appropriate speed, but not rush this, because this is significant and this is important. And organizations get better when they look at themselves and they're candid with what they do well and where they can improve. And we clearly have some areas to improve. So those are the steps moving forward, Mr. Veras and members of the board. And interested in your feedback, questions that you might have. And of course, we're listening for any additional guidance that you might provide after. There's no action required today. We simply want you to hear, listen, assimilate the report, assessment outcomes, and if there's anything else we need to follow up on.
Thank you, Chancellor. Let me kick it off with a few comments, and then I'm going to give everybody an opportunity across the board to make comments and ask questions. I think in the presentation, there's a key word to understand, and that's we have safety providers. That the campus safety plan is our responsibility. It comes from us, and essentially people. The way that we have in 20 plus years ago, and certainly Trustee Moreno can comment, when we had our own security, that meant that it was us who did it as well. Today we contract out. I think we look very closely in terms of the efficiency, the effectiveness, and at the same time, we're not blind to the happenings of the world, the happenings that are in front of us, the questions that are being asked and demanded responses for, and those things all impact the way we make our assessments here. But I know there was concerns that were raised initially in terms of the survey process. I would like to say the survey process is just a component to a much larger conversation that included a number of assessment pieces and data inputs from other places. But ultimately, I think we have to view this as essentially a contract and a process that didn't quite have the vigor in terms of data. We got very comfortable as an institution with maybe not necessarily having bad incidences and feeling generally like it was okay. But I think we have to understand that the resources we provide here for safety are from the same pot of resources that competed with every other thing we do in this institution. So we do want safe spaces. We want people to feel safe and comfortable across the board and have a learning environment that's conducive to respect. And that can be designed in a number of different ways. Over the past several years, we spent a lot of time talking about door locks. And I'm not sure door locks it may have been the tip of the iceberg for all the other things that are raised in this report and this assessment. And frankly, some of the recommendations that are laid out there are very important for us to follow up with and to get a deeper dive into what's necessary for the campuses. Because I'd like to say that I would hope there's no difference when a student comes onto a campus at Pierce or when a student comes onto a campus at LA Trade Tech. That's our responsibility. That's what we need to strive for. We have to have consistency in the way that people are treated and the way that people feel safe from students, faculty, and staff alike. And to understand that we're also part of a community and there's a balance. Lots of us have worked hard to try to put community back into the community college. And sometimes it's just making sure that, we have a general atmosphere and culture of having respect and dignity in the way we treat each other, the way we respond to each other, and have these culture and environments that are conducive to high level activities in positive ways for our community here. So let me start off with saying that, and this is again, a follow up from that first meeting we had in December and a follow through, I should say. And there's still actually a ton of work. I think this assessment revealed that there's much more work to do in this matter for us when it comes to the campus safety and the engagement is necessary from continued engagement is necessary from our students, faculty, and staff, and it's important for all of us to be able to have this open and comfortable dialogue and not be afraid that the voices are diminished or not listened to. So I want to make sure that this is, even though I think we're midway in the process now as we begin an RFP development and the safety and many of the things that were recommended there. These are all pieces and features and may actually take multiple RFPs, to be honest. Those are things we haven't necessarily talked about, but may require other kinds of things to be considered. I don't want to also not let this pass by pointing out the really critical and important mental health component here that I know we can view it in different categories, but that relationship had initially been tied to an armed security presence, when the reality is we just need mental health and mental health support in more ways than the ones that we've been dealing with here on the campuses. So, so with that, let me open it up to my colleagues, and I know everybody's anxious. We've had plenty of reading materials over the weekend when it comes to this report. It's quite a large report, a lot of data that's incorporated there, and lots of important pieces to discuss. But let me kick it off with Trustee Buelna, and then we'll run down the list of the Hollywood Squares here in front of me. So, Trustee Buelna.
With regard to, I listened to the entire presentation, and in preparation for this meeting, we also got a presentation of a short briefing. I was a little surprised, and maybe I missed it somewhere, that you actually made a recommendation. Was that within the scope of the services, or did I miss something? I guess that was the worrying part. I didn't know that there was going to be a recommendation, only because we are going to go through an RFP process.
Yeah, Trustee Walnut, typically our reports all involve recommendations. We'll do an assessment and then provide a list of recommendations that are consistent with best practices. And we provide those to the client so that they can determine, look at those recommendations to determine if those are appropriate for you to move forward with. Certainly they are recommendations. Some clients adhere to all of the recommendations. Some clients look through, as the Chancellor said, look through the recommendations and prioritize what is something that is a priority for you and needs to be acted upon now. So they are our recommendations based on the information that we determine through the assessment, and we provide those to you for consideration.
I guess Trustee Vettis and Chancellor and Mr. McGurty, I think that part is the one that I'm on the fence of whether there should have been a recommendation, only because we're about to go through an RFP process, and we're going to have to now balance it out, make sure that there's no bias, which goes back to the committee process. And I think, Chancellor, when we discussed, I think it was, you mentioned back in December, that, and we had a discussion, I'm not sure what the conclusion necessarily were, but we said at the end of this process, our entire user group, with students, faculty, staff, community, everyone who touches LACCD, needs to make sure that this entire process was open, transparent, and whatever decision was made, and that we were going to include a significant amount of our constituencies in the decision-making process. So I'm not looking for an answer, Chancellor, with regard to how that process is going to go, because we have RFP processes. But do you have any thought on what that process might be, so that at the end of this process, it's very, very clear, more than any other contract that we've ever done, that it could be a one vote one way or another, but that the process was fair, transparent, in the best interest of the constituencies that I just addressed. And that's for Chancellor Rodriguez.
Well, as was mentioned earlier, we're not through this process. We've just begun to unmask, better understand, and cover in some cases what our campus safety and security needs are. The first step is to assess where you're at, bring in professionals. We put out an RFP in which Hillard Hines won the RFP. We brought them in because of their expertise. There was a fair process in that, for that component of this. So now as we move forward, we have, in looking at what they're recommending, we'll look to see what we can do now to strengthen the organization irrespective of who the campus safety provider is, and then move out in an RFP process. And then in that, look to, as we do in other bids, find ways to include voices, perspectives, experiences of those who permeate on all of our 9 campuses. We have formalized shared governance groups in which this is a major topic of discussion. We all understand that it ultimately rests with the decision of the board, And we asked them, look at the agenda today. We ask you to say yes to a whole variety of things that we have to be able to defend and to support. And this will be no different. But this will take obviously longer because of the scrutiny, because it's a high stakes decision. So we will move through it methodically, thoroughly, in a way that's inclusive, in a way that is centered on the values that we all support and expect. So those are just some initial thoughts of Dr. Welna, but I'm not concerned of that we will not find a way, as we've done in the past with other, I'll just describe it as high stakes decisions, to include people and voices and perspectives that are important to the decision-making process. But it will go through a formal procurement process that is laden with safeguards for balance, for fairness, for equity, and whatnot. And we'll be very clear in the RFP, and this document will help to inform the language that we will use for that. And I do expect there to be multiple safety providers who will be bidding on working with our district.
President Vettis, if I might just add one quick thing to that.
Yes.
Remember, part of our recommendations also is recognizing the fact that the district may very well want options moving forward. And so part of what those recommendations are trying to do is to help you understand that if you were to ask external vendors, somebody other than LASD, to bid on something like this, those vendors, one of the first questions they're going to ask is, what types of calls for service do you have? How many do you have every year? How many people have you been using? They're going to ask the very data that we couldn't find in our process. So part of those recommendations to help you understand that so you can actually move forward so that you would be able to figure out a process for doing that, recognizing that those other vendors that you may be seeking down the road are going to ask those questions before they would bid on something like this.
I understand, and you know, I had to drink my 7-Up before I had my question. So now that I have my 7-Up, I'm good. So I guess you had me until that, not had me, but in terms of that final recommendation that you made, I'm just not comfortable with it. I understand what you're saying, Mr. Davis. I truly appreciate what you just said. And Mr. McGurty, I thought your presentation was a very good presentation. It's just this process goes to the soul of our district, which is the safety of our students. So this is why at every stage of the process, we have to assure, and I don't believe that you just put bias into it. I'm just saying we have to be careful with it as we balance everything. And I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. But we, as our name, as our title shows, we're trustees. That is our job, to make sure that this core about the safety of our students, staff, faculty is at the core of that decision-making process. And it unsettled me a bit, and I appreciate the response. Thank you.
Okay. Next, Trustee Vella, questions or comments?
Thank you, President Veras. Yeah, I mean, look, the hard work of, any organization in looking at, our options and this assessment is going to be, at the very least, taken seriously. I do want to say that I think for me, part of the analysis, if you would, has been the kind of inequities on, our policing program. And I think for me, whether it's, a hybrid, which, I think lends a lot of, credit and legitimacy involving, our students when, especially if they're in the world of law enforcement, or at least training to be, all the way to, the local police departments that govern each college, or, sheriff, or anybody who would be interested in working with us. It's really about starting from a real, perspective of how we've changed, how students have changed, how times have changed, frankly, how technology has changed. And so how do we integrate a lot of these findings into the RFP in order for us to really look at the way that, we're utilizing, number one, the sensitivity that's needed. You're looking at the sensitivity of how, we treat our African American and Latino students differently at our campuses, implicit bias, furthering that with and coupling it with, community policing that your report says we need to really look at. And, maybe it's going to be that some people are going to say, you know what, including the sheriff's department, we're not in that business. We're not willing to put that extra mile. And I think for us as clients, look, I spent 10 years at the County of LA. I worked with the sheriff's department, oversaw their patrol equity plans in East LA and Commerce, Southgate, you name it. I know how they work. And so at the end of the day, we are a client. We need to, ask for what is best for our faculty, our students, and really kind of put that in the RFP and really ensure that we're looking at different, alternatives, not just the sheriff's department. Now, that being said, we have a very, very interesting time now where we're looking at the ways that all of these big, law enforcement agencies are dealing. You just saw, in Minnesota, where you're literally having people fired, you're having people, prosecuted, and because again, people are saying enough is enough. So, I think for us, and I, implore my colleagues here, I would love for us to sit down and, look, dissect, and really what we really want as trustees for our students and faculty, and whoever comes to the table and really kind of lends itself to that. And again, the different models is going to be something that I think, we're going to really be, talking about in the next, couple of months, because at the end of the day, we really have to acknowledge that times have changed. For us to look at homelessness as a big factor, right, in our colleges, where I remember going to community college. I don't remember that being an issue, but it is an issue. If you look at LA City College, you look at Trade Tech, we've all been there. How do we treat these people humanely and still deal with law enforcement? So I think for us, it's going to be really an issue of like what we want and what we're willing to pay for it. And I think that how that looks like is not something I want to focus on tonight. Quite frankly, I would like for us to kind of dissect all this and, grab some more, input doesn't have to be just from this, from this firm. Input could be from everyone else. And, quite frankly, I want to thank people who came here and provided their input. They took their time, who are emailing or whatever. That's also part of it, right? And so I think as long as we are, transparent and realistic about what we want to do, I think we'll be, in a much better place than we are today, which is really the status quo. And I want to say the status quo for me isn't really working right now, just the way it has been. I think we definitely need to create some reform. That is something that I do draw the line there, right? Where we really need to change the way we do business for security. You talk about centralization being a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing with our sheriff department. There's something, centralization or whatever that bad word, but on this time, no, it'd be good for us to have one command center that is, we as leaders of the district are aware of what's happening at all our colleges. It shouldn't be where each college doesn't know what each college is doing. When you think about how we've evolved, I think we have a lot to really think about in the way that we manage our security system. And, even the whole finding about just having one person, Mr. Ramirez, who's in charge of all of the day-to-day, I think we need to really look at how the district is going to be part of it and not just, and integrate more. I know cities that have contracted with different police departments, they're putting more of their staff now in, guiding their contracted law enforcement to get what they want, so I think we could head that way too. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Next, we'll go to Trustee Hoffman.
Thank you, Board President Veras, and thank you, Chad and Rob. And Chad, as you know, I attended most of the town halls at the colleges on Zoom, obviously. You know, and the one thing that was very loud and very clear, and you said it over and over again tonight and in your report, is that when we talk about safety and security, whoever winds up being on our campuses needs to be a part of our community and a part of that campus. And we heard, you know, I heard from, in all the town halls that I attended, there was at least 3, 4, 5 faculty members that spoke out. I remember one at West LA College who said, you know, I've taught in the same classroom, the same night, you know, every week, and the sheriffs still don't know who I am. They don't recognize me. They don't know my name. If I call them, they still want me to take out, you know, 7 pieces of ID to open a classroom and unlock the doors. And so I think that's huge. I think we need to make sure that whoever is on our campuses providing safety and security becomes a part of the campus, attends events, gets to know folks by name, especially faculty and staff who are there in the evening. So I think that came out, and the desire to have somebody who really understands that we're an educational institution and we're here for students. On the student side, you know, there was a lot of, they felt that law enforcement wasn't always, even if they called them because something was wrong, wasn't always responsive. I remember a woman at Pierce College who was being harassed by another student. And I guess the response to her was, well, when something actually happens, call me back. But then they also didn't know to tell her, oh, you can go to the Title IX office, you can go see the, you know, the vice president, or you can go to the dean. They need to know what other resources we have on campus as well. They need to be integrated into our campus community. And I also think we have to have a huge culture shift. You know, what I heard coming out of lots of these meetings and the breakout sessions, it was almost sort of like with employees and students, it was us and them. The employees felt like they needed safety and security kind of to protect them from students. And the students felt victimized and not protected. That was just my sense. And so I think we need to bridge that gap. We need to, you know, we need to sort of come together and have a big like shift in, why do we have safety and security officers? Why do we have the sheriffs on campus? Why are they there? Are they there to protect us from active shooters, which also came up? Or are they there to protect us from our own students? I mean, I mean, we really need to sort of identify before we can even put out an RFP, like why do we need them? And if we don't even have the data, and that's very concerning to me over the years, then I think we need to sort of reflect and figure out, you know, what is their main role? Is it to protect us from a natural disaster, which also, you know, and active shooters, or why are they there? So I guess that would be my concern and my question. And I don't think we should rush to put in an RFP. I think we need to be clear about what it is that we want. And we should have some kind of a program where our students can feel like they have buy-in, and that you know, maybe they want to go into the field as well. Like, we should have some kind of tie-in all together when we're bringing some outside organization onto our campus. I mean, even in our building program, you know, those folks get involved in campus activities and get to know who our students are and who our faculty and staff are. And I would like to see the same when we talk about safety and security.
Okay, thank you, Trustee. I guess I would want to say one thing. I don't think we're taking this as a rush to an RFP, but we do have a contract that does have a time attached to it. I think the desire is to do this right. And we've given ourselves essentially from 6 to 12 months to try to do it right. I think that's a good amount of time to put together an RFP. Granted, how people respond to us, you know, that's going to come down the road. You know, so this is essentially a document to help guide us to applications or proposals, I should say, is a better way to say that. And in the proposals, I think the deeper sort of thought process that several of you have mentioned already will be definitely included in that process. But this isn't a rush. It's more important for us to do this right than anything else, because you're right. I think several of us make comments about culture and environment and atmosphere and the various things that are there that are important and valuable. But to be honest, we've had about 20 plus years of not paying a whole lot of attention to this security providing. And I think we can all certainly admit that. The end product results, the data that's not there for us to view is certainly one of the symptoms that talks about the overall challenge that we have here. So thank you. Very good comments, trustees so far, and Trustee Hoffman to you. Next, let me jump over to Trustee Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not sure really if I have a question as much as a comment, and I've been writing notes to myself. First of all, I agree with Trustee Buelna's concern regarding the recommendation to continue work with the Sheriff's Department on a number of reasons, and maybe these are some of his. For one, your professional backgrounds, in my view, make you a bit biased. And based off of the concerns of the voices that we heard during our public comment, where these are people that are obviously adamantly opposed to your suggestion and are continuing to contract with the Sheriff's Department due to safety reasons, and your own acknowledgement that you did not have sufficient data on crime statistics, number of calls, and that type of thing. It sounds as if you're saying that LACCD failed to do its due diligence in contracting with the Sheriff's Department by not establishing these specific guidelines and stating our expectations at the start for what we were expecting in terms of interactions with our stakeholders as well as their accountability. And if that's the case, it's in line with what Trustee Vela stated, so I won't repeat it. My concern is also the recommendation. I appreciate the information that you provided, although I do agree with some of our public speakers, it does sound a bit biased. There's no real data that you're presenting to us saying that it's because you didn't have the data to utilize. So I'm just very concerned, and I do hope that as a district, as we continue these conversations, and I know that we had a number of town halls, but as we continue these conversations that, we consider the past issues that we've had, because I know that around Trade Tech College, a lot of the issue with the Sheriff's Department wasn't on campus with our students, it was around campus. It was our students traveling to and from. But based on the questions of your survey, which was also noted by one of the speakers, the questions that were posed in the survey were not to get facts, were not to get the stakeholders' true concerns about the issues with the Sheriff's Department. It was to ask your feelings about law enforcement. That's different. I feel very strongly that I should feel safe with and around law enforcement, but that doesn't mean that I do as a Black person, as the mother of Black people, especially 2 Black men. So I understand the concern. With Trade Tech College having that issue and that concern, I just find it very hard to believe that you had, considering that this is a longstanding problem, that you've had what you refer to as a small but vocal opposition to the Sheriff's Department. So I hope that as we move forward, that we do continue to call on these voices and take those concerns into account as we make decisions versus this report being our focal point. Thank you.
Trustee Henderson, thank you for your comments. I really appreciate that. And a couple of things that you said ring very true, and that is expectations and accountability. And when we look at that recommendation, if we pull that recommendation that Trustee Buelna has spoken to, that's given some of you concern, what we're saying is right now, our desire is to put the district in the driver's seat. You're the customer. As President Vera said, you're the customer, you're the client. And we want you to be set up in such a way that you can constantly evaluate and analyze the services that are being provided. And as Rob alluded to, the individual that comes forward or the groups that come forward to bid on the process are going to want to know that information. So over the course of time, what we looked for, we didn't find, and that's inconsistent with what Rob and the rest of the team finds when we look at agencies. So it's very important to us as you look for a multi-year provider that you've got the pieces internally, that you have the framework to look at that through open eyes and get real-time data and analyze that on an ongoing basis to make sure that your expectations are being met, regardless of who that provider is. So that recommendation, again, is focused on bringing the customer, you, LACCD, the customer and the client, to the forefront in your expectations and making sure that those expectations are met. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, let's jump over to Trustee Fong.
Thank you, President Bettis, and thank you so much to the Chancellor and to the entire team for working efforts on this, and to Chad and Rob as well, and to the many participants and everyone who participated in the focus groups. Just hearing a number of the comments from my colleagues, at the end of the day, we always want to make sure our campuses are secure and safe for our students, for our faculty, for our staff. And it's concerning to me that Trustee Hoffman referenced a faculty member at West Valley College who has been teaching there for many years that didn't know, that the Sheriff's Department didn't know this particular faculty member. I think a lot of our staff and faculty are pretty much on our campuses, and once they reach tenure, they're there for extended amounts of time and for 10, 20, 30 years. And whatever security provider we have, whether it's a Sheriff's Department, whether it's another provider, they need to know our personnel, and we need to really have the community part of the aspect of this built in. It sounds like there's a big disconnect between what's happening now and what is on our campuses. And I know the last year has been a very challenging year, but as we come back on campus, especially with half our classes in the fall, we know that we need more community engagement. Saw a lot of comments about more foot patrols. And then listening to all the comments from the public speakers today, it's really disconcerting that you have a number of social scientists who are questioning the validity of the data, questioning the survey questions. So I'm really curious to see what the raw data is, and I'm not sure if that's available or not. If that's something that we can take a look at in terms of the raw data. I think I heard in your presentation too, Rob and Chad, that they said 92% of the folks had a unique IP address. So does that mean like 8% of folks was duplicative, or you can provide a little bit more insight on that? And then secondly, on the policies and procedures, I think Trustee Vela referenced this too, but this is an opportunity for more standardized policies and procedures across our campuses. It's a bit disconcerting to see that one campus, whether it's West LA, has a different procedure versus Harbor versus Mission College. In the way that the organization is structured, how can we provide better services to our students, faculty, and staff? So I think a centralized dispatch and security operations center would be some good reforms. And I'm also curious, were there conversations also with the Culver City Police Department, Monterey Park Police Department, and LAPD and the various jurisdictions as well? And as we come out of this COVID crisis, we know the higher education and the way we deliver education on our campuses, everything's changed forever. What are we looking at in terms of increased transparency, looking at implicit bias training, and how we are integrating a lot of these findings into a potential RFP? And what President Veta said, this is like, how do we make sure we get this right? So I think really having the additional conversations, comments, and this is an ongoing process, as Trustee Vela stated, it's really making sure that we have additional comments from all our different stakeholder groups, and really make sure that their voices are being heard and that input is a continuous process. And then also looking at the mental health and social services aspect as well. So those are some of my comments, and really appreciate everyone's thoughts on and how we can really make sure that our campuses are safe for our students, faculty, and staff, and as we proceed in this process here. So thank you so much.
Okay. And Trustee, I know you had some comments about data. Is that something they can follow up with you after?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. And then finally, Trustee Moreno, questions or comments?
Yes, I think both. A couple. I've got a series of questions. When was this report prepared? I don't remember. Somebody mentioned that there was this during COVID? Was it pre-COVID? When was this prepared?
Trustee, I believe it was in December where we had our one of our board retreats where we discussed.
No, I meant the data that was acquired and the process. And maybe the gentleman.
It was
spring semester, sir.
Spring semester. We contracted them in January, and it was collected over the spring semester.
This spring semester that we're this year.
Yes.
Well, this is during a period of time when I guess the majority of our students are off campus. Is that right?
That is correct.
Also, did the evaluators see any what we used to have as a core cadet staff that were unarmed and not so uniformed as to frighten anybody? Did that occur? Maybe I should ask the gentleman the question.
Thank you for the questions, Trustee Moreno. I would like to go back to your initial question. Is we looked at 10 years of data, and we were very careful in our community outreach that we posed our questions not just to gather input during COVID, but what were your experiences with security pre-COVID, pre-pandemic? What were your experiences in 2019?
Was this acquired? How did you get the students to come during a time when they were prohibited from coming?
We held Zoom meetings.
All right, that's what I need to know.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for the question. Yeah, every community forum was.
The other question, I don't want to take a lot of your time, but let me get to the issues at Zoom. I understand now. I always used to get, as president of the college, and a number of colleges now, I always got crime statistics. I don't know whether it's monthly or bi-monthly, I forgot the time, but we had a pretty accurate summary of all the events that occurred on each of our campuses. Are you suggesting that it's not available to you?
The crime statistics are available, but what's important, what we heard, and Trustee Hoffman alluded to this, is that there's a community-oriented, a strong desire for a community-oriented policing model. And what we don't find is performance metrics in that vein. There are things, not just crime statistics, but what are the officers doing on a daily basis? How are they engaged with the campus community? We don't have that information. And further, we don't have the information.
How would you acquire those? Are you suggesting that they keep track of their daily events as they pass a particular building? How would that be a real? How could you make that a logical and appropriate course of action? What would you do? What would you require of them to do?
And that's
your intent.
Yeah, that's a great question, Trustee. And that's something that we spoke to. That's not only a best practice, but a standard practice in law enforcement agencies across the nation, is that your time is accounted for. From the time you start your shift until you end your shift, there's accountability for what you're doing, what calls for service you're sent to, whether you're assisting a customer, whether you're responding to a crime, whether you're engaged in community outreach, you're providing training, you're attending an event. All of that information is captured, and that's where a standardized operations center, standardized dispatch center would provide that information. So much of what is going on the campus is unknown to the district, unknown to the board.
The other question I have is your interest in a standardized central dispatch driven by the need to have statistics, or was that going to somehow improve the service of providing safety on our college campus? Sounds like it's the former. That you are
actually
recommending a centralized dispatch in order to acquire some statistical information about what is transpiring at either at each location by officer.
It can be
actually, trustee. I think it's twofold. It benefits both areas. By capturing the data, you get increased accountability. It's better for the officers. It's safer for the officers. It increases visibility of what's occurring. So it's a twofold benefit. Everybody wins in that situation. Rob?
Yeah, and I was just going to give you a quick example of how that's done. I mean, say, for example, I'm an officer, security officer on any one of your 9 campuses. And if all of a sudden I see somebody who's in need, whether it's somebody who's experiencing homelessness, or whether it's a student asking for directions, or whether it's a teacher needing to get into a classroom, I can use my radio to go out and connect with the communication center and say, put me out on such and such a type of call. We'll use radio codes to shorten the discussion over the radio waves. And then they will type into a computer what you're doing, who you are, where you are. And then when you're finished, you use a code that will indicate to them, you know, I helped a student, or I gave directions, or I opened a door, or I wrote a report on a crime that occurred. Those mnemonics, if you will, those codes can then be categorized and analyzed so that we know exactly who was doing what at given times and look at trends. You know, that data, especially if you're looking on a regular basis, will help indicate to you whether or not you're having a crime increase or a certain type of a social issue increase that needs to be addressed. Not just
but you know, let me suggest something to you that on a college campus is distinctly different than a city. My concern is this. One of the issues was whether we could have our own officers participate with whatever events there are on campus so that they will become more acquainted with everyone and we can see the human side of them, not just the uniform, which at one time we did when we had our own police department. And I don't want to spend too much time on why that failed, but it didn't fail because of that. But we did have those people at each of our campuses who were like our staff, who regularly met with other people, befriended the staff. They were aware of them, but they weren't called upon to keep track of every person they talked to. You see, there's a kind of a conflict there. If what you have to do is whenever you're going out to the campus and you're talking to people and you're engaging in interactions, that you would have to track every interaction, that I think is overdone, because it also creates, I also believe that creates a wall between the police and those people they're serving, which is one of the criticisms. You understand that we have a very difficult situation if we're going to ask for one active participation in the college community and the other be called upon to report every individual they call or how many rooms they unlocked or whether they spoke to them. That those don't work. The other piece.
I appreciate very much what you're saying. I don't disagree with it. I don't think that what I'm suggesting is that you'd have to put on in a code or a call the specific name of a professor, something that you let into a room. And you don't have to record every time that you say hello or trying to help somebody on a face-to-face human basis. I mean, I would expect those things to happen just like they do in any other police department.
So what would you have them report on then?
Remember, if you're also looking to put out an RFP down the road here to have people bid on the types of services that you would like to provide, they might want to know, for example, how much time do the officers actually spend doing this type of thing, unlocking doors, interacting with students, helping the homeless, et cetera. It helps them understand what type of services they need to provide. So it's not as if you even have to put anybody's name in these things, but if you're measuring this, one other thing you'll find, Trustee Moreno, is that if the officers who are entering these codes and keeping better track of what they're doing know that that's being looked at and that it's being managed and being analyzed, they have a tendency to do more of those good things that you're actually trying to do. So, they'll do what people are looking for.
I'm not sure you report every action to your wife when you're at home if you're married, but understand that when you're involved with community policing, the fact you got to pick up a phone and tell everybody that what you've been doing in terms of who you talk to and what you've unlocked, I think there is a problem there. Now, the reason I say that is I couldn't figure out why there was such a disparity in terms of the analysis you've come up with in the traditional information you get from other agencies. I can assure you this, if you're on a college campus, it's distinctly different than having called Montebello PD or Culver City PD, because that's a whole different world. But I guess the question is, did you ever have an opportunity to meet with our Corps Cadet program? And because the issue of, the distance created by the uniform, so to speak, or by the gun, did you ever any information on that program?
Yes, we did. We actually talked with the SOAs at each one of the campuses, spoke with them. As Trustee Hoffman can share, we heard a lot about the cadet program in our outreach. So we did have occasions to talk with cadets. Actually talked with former cadets that served in that role on campuses before they moved on to law enforcement careers. So we did look at that. And there was a mix of input that we received regarding that program. Some campuses have an abundance of cadets. Some campuses have almost no cadets. And right. It was equally wide ranging how they were evaluated as far as their effectiveness, what they did. Some individuals indicated that the cadets would take on the persona or the attitude of the sheriff security officers. Others said that they valued their services, to have them available to assist, to walk around the campus, open doors, those types of things. So it was a wide range, but we absolutely did look into that. Yes, sir.
Well, okay. I've also had over time interactions with our own police department. I have to share with you, at one time we had the finest police department you could find. However, somehow 15 years into the program, individuals took over that didn't hold the same high standards. So by the time it was 20 plus years, 30 years, over how many years we had it, that at the end of all that work, we had a police department was highly dysfunctional because the quality of people had been downgraded, you might say. But I mean, the other piece is, I'm terribly concerned also about the issues of racial fairness. And there's no situation we should put any campus in that would somehow result in some kind of complaint or concern expressed by students and staff. But I'd like to know what the racial makeup of the sheriff's office are. I find, for instance, it was very diverse when I was there. As a matter of fact, I believe I had a black captain of police and a number of officers that were black as well as Hispanic and Asian. So knowing that statistic, knowing where we are, we might be able to diffuse some of the complaints if we identify people and the staff that we've had work with regard to the sheriff's department. Finally, I guess kind of comical. Did anyone like the uniforms? Kind of tongue in cheek. anyways.
Yeah, I'll let you take that one if you want to.
Yeah. I don't like the sheriff's office uniform to begin with, but that's a different matter. Anyways, I do believe, though, that we have a long history, and I appreciate your work. I know there's going to be criticisms. However, our fundamental goal is to provide the security and safety that all of our staff and students need to be able to work with or under. And believe me, we've had times in the past, we had exceptional violence on campus. I won't go into gory details about the gangs and other kinds of things. It's taken a lot of hard work to get a safe college. And for those people who aren't familiar, one of our reasons for our declining enrollment during certain eras is because we got a reputation that our campuses were not safe. I know that was the case at East. Fundamental to that is making certain not only the students feel safe, but the campus, the surrounding community can see the individuals who are there, because very often the violence occurred from not within the college student population, but outside surrounding areas. And knowing that there is a armed officer there, I think very often dissuaded them from coming and creating. I know for a fact it did. But anyways, I think there's more information, more discussion before we make a final decision on this matter. Thank you.
Okay, so that, I believe we've had everybody answer a question. Let me, Chancellor, let me ask if you and Mr. McGinty and Mr. Davis can be available for follow-ups from the board here as we start to move on to the next phase of this process here. So appreciate that. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation. Very much appreciated. And I believe the documents are posted on board docs for the public to view, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And Trustee Vettis, that concludes the Chancellor's report.
Okay, thank you. All right, gentlemen, thank you. We are moving on to the next section of the agenda, and there is a presentation here listed. It is a presentation that is West Los Angeles's Fine Arts Partial Renovation Project Schematic Design. If I can ask Dr. Smith and Dr. Limbaugh from West LA and Mr. Earhart from our capital construction side to kick off the presentation, please.
Okay, Ruben, would you like for me to begin?
No, absolutely. Feel free to jump in and just let me present the item for you really quickly, Dr. Limbaugh. Trustees, we appreciate the opportunity to share this brief presentation with you. This is a schematic design review. So we have about, between 7 and 8 pages of information here that we're going to share that basically just gives us an opportunity to aim to improve the programs and synergies at West LA College. We want to improve space utilization, and we want to deliver the best spaces that support student success. So we have Dr. Limbaugh and Mr. Earhart here with us to present the schematic design for the Fine Arts building renovation.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Crystal, there we go. This is basically, members of the board, a confirmation of what Dr. Smith just presented. I do want to emphasize one thing, though. At West, we were very focused on trying to use our facilities as effectively as possible. So this is a very creative approach to using a building that has been underutilized for a while. And I want to emphasize as we go into this, that it was very much a collaborative process. We had a 50-person building users group involved. I allowed anybody who wanted to talk about this to be part of the process. So as you go through this, you will see that the ideas that are presented are not only a combination of ideas from across the campus, but it's a really interesting mix of both academic and administrative space. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Earhart.
Thanks, Dr. Limbaugh. Good evening, board members. Thank you for taking the time to hear us through on this one. We kind of present, as you know, some of these capital projects moving forward, and this is a big stepping stone for some of the larger projects that are going on at West Los Angeles College. So we wanted you to kind of get into a little bit of a deep dive, essentially a comprehensive plan to remove some of the older portable buildings that we have that have high FCIs and bungalows that were built in the 60s and 70s. Next slide, Crystal. Primarily, this will be a design bid build delivery project, which is a standard hard bid, as some of you have come to terms with. We're currently in the schematic design phase, which is scheduled to finish roughly around the third quarter of this year, with construction starting about the third quarter of 2022 once we get through DSA approval. And the total construction cost roughly is about $6.9 million in construction costs. Next slide. This slide just kind of gives you an idea of where we're relocating some of these offices. FAB is a current building that stands within the campus. It is a facilities fine arts building. It was built in roughly 2000. Next slide. And this gives you an idea of the bungalow range that we're relocating back into FAB. As you see on the left-hand side there, buildings A, B3, B6, and B1 and B4 are roughly the bungalows that we will be removing and demolishing as part of the HLRC project down the line. But as part of that, we have to move a majority of those folks into the FAB building. And then to gain some efficiencies within the program itself, we're moving international students office from SSB, excuse me, to FAB. Next slide. Here we're going to talk a little bit about, this is what the FAB first floor will look like. Currently, basic needs is housed in that roughly purple area that you see there, which is considered room 103. We're relocating them over to the pinkish area to gain a little bit of efficiencies. We're going to increase the size of food fridges and freezers to accommodate a better work environment, and also on operational efficiency as well. And in the mailroom reprographics area, that will be the green area, that is also being added back into the first floor. Next slide. So for level 2, the majority is relocating CalWorks and the high school outreach from the bungalows. 1 is to allow the removal of those bungalows, and 2 is to increase the operational efficiency. We're actually utilizing 2 classrooms that have not been utilized over the past few years. So getting down our FCI numbers roughly and increasing the utilization of that space. The west side extension, which you see is the gray area or the green area here, will remain exactly as it is. It is already operating in that building. Next slide. Level 3, this is currently occupied by Star Preparatory Academy. Their lease will be up relatively soon, and we'll be moving the TRIO program into this space. And this will roughly be mostly paint and some FF&E solutions. Roughly the layout, the overall layout will remain roughly the same. And that kind of covers it. Quick and easy, kind of a quick discussion. And Dr. Limbaugh, I'll have you field any questions we should have.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Colleagues, if you could raise your virtual hand, it's a pretty straightforward presentation. If you have questions or comments, if I can ask you to raise your virtual hand. Okay, seeing none. General Counsel, real quick, this is a presentation. Are we accepting the presentation? Because I believe Dr. Smith and his team will take it from here, right? So we're going to do this as noted as received and presented to the board. It's in compliance with all our standards, with all our rules, and it is something part of the board rules to have these types of presentations that are above a certain threshold of cost. So that's why we're getting the presentation to us.
As the ex-chair of FEMPOC, President Bettis, you stated it correctly. So thank you very much. And that is what is currently taking place. It's just being presented to the entire board at this particular time.
Okay, colleagues, thank you. So that we'll note that for the record as received and presented and received, I should say. So thank you all for that presentation. We're off to the combined consent calendar. These are matters requiring a majority vote. We have items, screen change here. 1 second. We have items M1 through Z13 that are part of the consent calendar. These include items in Human Resources, Personnel Commission, Academic Affairs, Student Services, Budget and Finance, and Facilities. Colleagues, is there any item that you wish to have more information about? Can you please state the item on the agenda where we may find it? And if not, I'm happy to take a motion in a second for approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Trustee Fong, seconded by Trustee Hoffman. Chancellor, for the items coming up, and not just here, but overall, since it's already been stated for the record, I won't restate it. But we'll move forward with the consent calendar votes. Are
we to ask now, or what are we doing?
We're in the consent calendar. Yes, items M1 through Z13. It's been motioned and seconded.
How about those of us have questions?
Okay, if you have questions, state the item number.
Okay.
If you could state it by M whatever. I mean, it's
okay. It's N3, page
N3. Okay, your question or your request.
Well, I have a question about the that we are moving these classifications upward, I believe based upon community criteria, community information, that is the prevailing wage, if that's the appropriate term. Question I have is that all these classifications, are they all SAP, or are there these same classifications engaged in other kinds of IT?
Ask Mr. De La Husse if he can respond to that.
Doesn't appear he's in the meeting.
Mr. Moreno?
Yes.
Let me make sure, excuse me, that I understand your question. Are these are all within the Office of Information Technology? That is correct.
Right,
That is
right.
correct.
But there are classifications, I trust, that are standard classifications with regard to all IT operations everywhere, except this appears that because we have SAP, these classifications are getting a bump.
Okay.
Just Chancellor, I see the Vice
Chancellor Litz is here. Let me pitch it to her. This
Yeah.
is part of our larger reorganization and of IT that has been going on for the last couple of years per the recommendations that we received from the Huron report. We utilized some of the vacancies back from the 2017 supplemental retirement plan to recast, reorganize, and repurpose positions that were then outdated and needed to be modernized, if I could use that word, with appropriate salary schedule. So Vice Chancellor Litz, if you could help fill in some of the gaps here and answer Mr. Moreno's question, please.
Absolutely. So these particular positions are supporting our student information system, our PeopleSoft system. There was a previous study, a salary study done several years ago that addressed the salary inequities for our SAP programming analysts and developers. This is looking at our other side of the house, focusing on the student information systems and bringing the salary of our staff in line with peer standards.
So is this SAP that we're looking at here in terms of?
No.
No.
It's the
this
PeopleSoft.
is PeopleSoft support staff.
This is SIS, Mr. Moreno.
Oh, okay. All right.
It is not for SAP.
All right.
None of these staff are SAP staff. That study was done in, I believe, 2013 or 2016.
Okay, Trustee, any other questions?
No, I don't have questions.
Okay, thank you. So let's proceed with a roll call vote here on the consent calendar.
Trustee Wilna,
Yes.
Trustee Fong,
Yes.
Trustee Henderson,
Yes.
Trustee Hoffman,
Yes.
Trustee Moreno,
Yes.
Trustee Vela,
Yes.
Trustee Vettis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. We're now on to item AA. These are business items. They're the regular agenda business items. And we'll first take up items AA1 through AA9. If I can ask for a motion in a second before we have any specific questions on any particular item.
I'll move to approve. Oh.
Motion by Hoffman, second by Fong. Colleagues, any questions on any of the items in the business section? Okay, seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Wilna,
Yes.
Trustee Fong,
Yes.
Trustee Henderson,
Yes.
Trustee Hoffman,
Yes.
Trustee Moreno,
Yes.
Trustee Vela,
Yes.
Trustee Vettis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Those items pass. Next is section BB. These are facility items. It's BB1 through BB11. Let me take a motion in a second here, and I'll ask for any items that need additional information. So,
And please note that BB7 is omitted.
correct. As noted at the start of the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, colleagues, a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve BB1.
Second.
Moved by Hoffman, seconded by Vela. Any item that requires additional information or that you have questions on? Okay, seeing no virtual hands, we'll move forward with the roll call vote.
Trustee Wilner,
Yes.
trustee Fong,
Yes.
trustee Henderson,
Yes.
trustee Hoffman,
Yes.
trustee Moreno,
Yes.
trustee Vela,
Yes.
trustee Vettis.
Yes. Okay, thank you, colleagues. Next, we are CC, recommendations from the Chancellor. We have listed here approval of board policies, chapter 5. This is again is continuing updates and to bring into consistent standard with I should say, this is a project that's been long in process, but to standardize and to modernize our board policies. These all will also be part of our board docs, can be looked up at any time, can be linked, but it's essentially our modernization process. And with many of these, I know trustee and myself have had a chance to review many of these items along with our staff initially. So I will ask for a motion in a second, and then happy to take any questions on the policies listed for approval.
I'll motion to approve the new board policies.
Thank you, trustee Hoffman. And can I get a second from?
Second.
Trustee Henderson. I will note that these are updates and most of them are transfer over and formatting. A handful of changes throughout, but the larger changes will be brought to us. But this is mostly a modernization, compliance, but standardization effort.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
We're using the league, the CCLC template for
Yes.
the board policies, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's the standard that the board requested a few years back. So this is step-by-step aligning and moving and using the lead template. And of course, it aligns very well with board docs that we use here. So it's a searchable, connectable format that I think we'll all be satisfied and happy with when it's complete. So, but you can see there in the background, it's a little bit more succinct to what I put there. So, okay. With that, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Wilner,
Yes.
trustee Fong,
Yes.
trustee Henderson,
Yes.
trustee Hoffman,
Yes.
trustee Moreno,
Yes.
trustee Vela,
Yes.
trustee Vettis.
Yes. Okay, item passes. Next is DD, notices, reports, and informatives. Colleagues, we have 3 that are listed there. Notice for approval of board policies, chapter 2. This is continuing from the item we just approved. There's an update to adopt the LACCD initial proposal to the College Staff Guild 1521A regarding negotiations of July 1st, 2020 to July 30th, 2023, the collective bargaining agreement. And the third one is a notice to adopt the revised 2021 calendar for the Board of Trustees, regular board meetings and committee meetings. And just so you know, trustees, since there is potentially a lobbying opportunity in Washington, D.C., we will place on the agenda potentially a modification of our board meeting in order to have a last opportunity to be part of a lobby process for the federal government in terms of upcoming activities here. So more information there, but necessary for us to be able to have our process continue forward. So, okay, with that, we'll deem those as read and accepted. They'll come back to us. We'll move on to announcements and indications of future proposed actions by board members. Trustee Hoffman, I see your hand.
Thank you so much, President Veras. So Chancellor, I noticed that today we approved travel for a conference for next week for 2 trustees. But I'm just wondering, as we move forward and we are, looking to return for on campus for fall, are you going to produce some new travel guidelines for faculty and staff?
Well, the guidelines will be informed by health codes and health protocols and standards, so we won't deviate from that. If travel is permitted, we will engage in the process to do that, and it is mostly. I will note that there are a number of states that the district passed a policy on, and there are new states that the counselor can let us know about that were prohibited as a board policy to travel to. So not every travel request will be authorized if indeed it is travel for conferences at those states. We just have not done that for the last 2-3 years, as you're aware. But in general, we'll follow the health and safety codes. Things are opening up, and some conferences, they're starting to have in-person meetings. So, for example, I will be attending one in San Diego. It's the first one that I've gone to in 18 months. So it's opening up, and so we'll slowly monitor. It's a case-by-case basis, but our rules will follow the health and safety protocols. And we did, for example, put in travel budget this year for our board as things begin to open up. Last year we were essentially at 0.
Right, I understand. So can we just collaborate with general counsel in terms of like mask mandates and all of that, and what our liability would be if somebody contracted a variant of COVID while they were at a sponsored conference or something?
Trustee Hoffman, those are, excuse me, those are very good questions. Let us take a look at that in terms of any of those particular protocols, as you know, and those are changing. The Chancellor also referenced, we do have a resolution that cited to California state law precluding travel to those states that have passed anti-LGBTQ statutes. Five new states were added, including the state of Florida, and the California Attorney General did make that announcement. So we will also update that particular list so that we're clear in terms of where there are restrictions to travel as well. But those are great questions. We'll update that particular list, and we can confer with the Chancellor and the Deputy relative to any of the health-related questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you, President Veras.
Thank you.
President Veras.
I just let me make a quick note on this one.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, in your research, could you also take a look at whether, as a condition of travel, we can mandate proof of vaccination? Because I think it's a workplace thing. Not all travel is required. Some of it is education and orientation, and certainly, I think from the standpoint of workplace safety, I know we can't mandate for many things in the daily job, but going on a trip and going to somewhere else, I think that could easily be facilitated. And I'm talking because as we open it up for us and our trustees, and if I can see the conferences and I can see all the other stuff coming down the path for everything else. So perhaps that's something that we can look at and research, because there's other things that can happen there. So apologize. Trustee Vela, your question, comment?
Yeah, it kind of relates to announcements. As I mentioned earlier, we will reconvene the Chancellor's Advisory Committee on LGBT Affairs that I chair. And one of the items of discussion in the agenda was going to be the recent travel ban from the state legislature for some of these states that are stripping away LGBT Bill of Rights. Some of these states originally had passed several protections. This is, most of our recent reversal due to the hostility towards my community. So I just want to make sure that we all, that we will agendize it and report back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trustee. Any other comments of future actions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move forward with the public comment for items not on the agenda. It was noted to me that we have some individuals signed up here. I believe we had 16 or 17 individuals Board Secretary, do we know what that number was? And I
Yes,
know,
we have a couple of canceled. We have 16.
okay, and they were all on the same item, correct?
Yes, the same item.
Okay, colleagues,
UI Local 99.
colleagues, if we can set, since it's 20 minutes per item, if we can set the item as 2 minutes per speaker and allow them to go past the 20-minute limit. Is there any objections to that? Okay, seeing none, then we will do this. So I know that we'll start with the persons that were signed up. These are for matters that were not on the agenda. And we'll indicate that each of the speakers has 2 minutes to speak to the board. So Board Secretary, can you read and give sufficient notice to the speaker and the one who's on deck in order to get ready for their moment to speak to the board here. So let's kick this off.
Okay, Chris Lozanne's the first one. Chris? 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, we can.
Okay, good afternoon, Board of Trustees and Chancellor. My name is Christian Ozan. I represent the members of SEIU Local 99. I just want to address the board regarding our members and our receiving a fair and equitable wage increase for our contract. We believe we represent the diversity you claim to support. Local 99 membership is made up of men and women of color, and we largely represent frontline workers in maintenance and operation. LACCD represent one of the largest community college districts in California, yet we're the lowest paid employees that is paid 5 to 6% less than other school districts. It is insulting that the district is telling us that they're not in a position to give our members a livable wage increase because the district has no money. Food, gas, and rent has continued to increase, and this is unacceptable. The district have significant reserves that would allow you to give our members a raise to show us that we are respected for the work we do and value for the diverse membership like you do with the highest paid staff. The district has received millions of dollars in recovery funding, so telling our members that you can't afford to give the lowest paid workers a raise is simply untrue. You can spend a fraction of this money and it won't hurt the district. I want to just remind the board that it was made very clear to us how valuable our roles are as essential workers, especially when myself and other members from our membership pleaded with you to keep us all home and safe while we endured the highest death rates of COVID-19 in LA County last year in November. We were all told to go to work, and while we did not get the support from you during this critical period, our members continue to report to work every day without hero pay for months, putting their lives and families at risk and being exposed to COVID, while most employees stayed at home. We deserve a fair contract now. You have all told our leaders and members you will stand with us now, and now is the time to prove you will keep your word. You'll be judged based on how you treat the lowest paid employees who are our members when it's time to support you again. We have stood with you and supported you, so I hope you will support us, our members. You said time is up?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
James Bradley. James Bradley.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear
Thank
me?
you. We can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, my name is James Bradley. I'm a steward at Southwest College, and I've been a steward and dealing with every level of community college for the last 15 years or so. I'll be very brief. Ms. Ozan brought up some interesting points. We've talked about a number of things that goes on with the district. I want to say that in every organization, one of the most important pieces of this organization is who cleans it up and how does it stay clean so it can stay aesthetically pleasing to visitors and welcome our students to clean environments. And I also want to say that we come up with reasons to ask to be made parable to the other community colleges around, and we get excuses. And I want to say two things about excuses. Excuse is not a reason to try, and excuses only sound good to the people that makes them, not to the people that receive them. And we talk about cleaning schedules, coming up with a new program. We're going to go back to pre-COVID and do everything we've been doing pre-COVID, but there's a but there. If there's a positive case of anything comes onto the campus, we go into special circumstances. Are we being trained for this, or how are we being compensated for this? We can't We've already said no heroes pay for this. So I'm suggesting that we raise our base pay with no excuse. Thank you.
Thank you. Mona Hunter.
Good afternoon, Chancellor Rodriguez and the Board of Trustees and my Local 99 members. I am a custodian over at Southwest College, and I was there from the beginning to the end. And I feel that we deserve a base rate pay because we were out there in the trenches and we were exposed also. But at the end of the day, I appreciate what Bradley has said, and I appreciate what Chris has said. We are essential workers and we do deserve that. The grocery workers got it, the custodians, the grocery checkers, the ones to put the groceries up, the gas is going up. Like they're saying, we need more pay because we're barely making it ourselves. And a lot of our co-workers hold 2 and 3 jobs outside of it just to support their families. So sooner or later, they're going to break down. So please give us our base rate pay, what we deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next one is Bonzel Haas. It looks like she is not signed on, so we'll go to the next one. Urain Bell. Urain Bell. Okay. Shatovia Shepherd. Please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes. Shatovia.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Shatovia Jernigan. I am part of SU Local 99. I am a regional steward. And I agree with what Chris Ozan said. I agree with what James Bradley said. Us as essential workers, we have been. Now, when I say we have been through this COVID-19. We've been through this situation with COVID-19. We're the ones that were affected by this because we get no hero pay. We did get no hero pay. I feel that we should get the basic salary raise, and we deserve it because, like everybody's saying, the gas is going up, the rent is going up, the groceries are going up. So I feel that we should get a basic raise.
Thank you.
That's it.
Joe Valenzuela. I'm sorry, who's this? You're breaking up. Martin Pignon. Martin Pignon. Lauren Shepard. Victoria Gutierrez.
Lauren Shepard is here. Lauren Shepard is here.
Good, sir. Go ahead. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
How are you doing? My name is Lauren Shepard. I'm a custodian at LACD College, also a steward for Local 99. And along with Bradley, Shatovia, and Chris, we deserve a raise. We were there during the trenches. When the governor gave his order for everybody to go home, we was told not to go home. We had to stay. We're there, we cleaned, we sanitized. We prepared the school for the students and the rest of the employees while everybody else stayed at home. And there's no reason why we should not get what we deserve. We were there, we didn't have a problem, we worked hard, and I think we deserve a raise with everything that's going on, the cost of living. Like they say, we do a lot of, some of us have jobs on the side just to be able to, pay our mortgage and then enjoy the rest of life. So while everybody was at home comfortably in their houses, we were on the front line cleaning and sanitizing, and we deserve a raise more than anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Victoria Gutierrez.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Victoria. I am a queer, working class, first generation woman of color, and I'm a Local 99 member. And since y'all love to talk about these categories of people within the framework of advancing social justice, I'm sure it won't be a problem for you guys to support a cost of living increase for us, especially considering the fact, as so many of my colleagues have already brought up, y'all had no problem sending us out to maintain unused campuses during the height of the pandemic while everyone else got to stay at home and be safe with their families. So just as you had no problem risking my life and the life of my fellow coworkers at the peak of the pandemic without hazard pay, I'm sure you'll have no problem figuring out how to kick us a few extra dollars every year. Especially when you have people like Chancellor Rodriguez making close to $500,000 in pay and benefits every year. That's almost 10 times more than the average Local 99 member makes. So yeah, I hope you guys support this base rate increase. And if you don't support it, maybe you can explain to us how it is that denying people, working class people of color, a living wage fits into your social justice agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill is on the line. Bill is on the line.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, Bill is here. I was having trouble getting in.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, go ahead, Irene. Thank you so much.
I'm
2
sorry.
minutes.
Okay, hi, my name is Irena Bell. I work for LACCD at the LA ELAC location. I'm here today to express my concern and rationale for why Local Union 99 members need and are asking for increase. Being that Local 99 members work for LACCD and have been recognized as essential workers, we the members expect that the district will take care of its employees as well and as much as it does its students. Inflation has clearly risen and rising. Gas, childcare, and food and more are expensive, are inflating. And I find it silly and ludicrous for the district to ignore the issue, expecting employees whose earnings are already on the low end of a two-figure salary to struggle with these issues without a raise or fair raises. So I'm asking the district to please take care of its employees just as much as you do your students and give us the raise that we deserve. Also knowing that we were out there on the front line working during a pandemic. And I would like to just add that during that pandemic, I have family members with the district who caught it at campus and took it home to his family. So this is of great concern to me that we are taken care of. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Capri, South?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Yes, my concerns are as the same as everyone else's, with the cost of living constantly going up in the state of California with gas, food, rent, mortgages, and everything. Our pay rate isn't able to keep up with it. And there's multiple people with multiple jobs just trying to break even, and it's not right. And we deserve a pay raise. And also with us putting our lives on the line, it was just, it'll be only right to give us a pay raise with us risking our lives for the past 18 months with the pandemic and everything. So I just feel like we deserve it with everything going on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Vince Nieto. Vince, unmute yourself. Okay, Reggie Bass didn't sign up. Jerome Townsend, Kevin Anderson, and Carlos Dia. So the last one is Vince Nieto, but unmute yourself, sir. He might have walked away from his PC. That's the last speaker.
Okay, all right. So if that's the last speaker, then we'll close public comment here. And thank you all for your comments. They are important for us as the board to hear. So thank you for that. Next, we'll move on to report of actions taken in closed session. I will note for the record that there was no action required by law to be reported out. And leads us to adjournment. Are there any objections to adjourn this meeting? Seeing none, I'll take all the nodding heads or the nodding no heads as that we're all ready to be adjourned. So with that, colleagues, we will stand adjourned. And we will see, I don't have it off the top of my head, but we have our board retreat coming up the 17th, Chancellor?
Yes, June 17th, 9 a.m.
June 17th.
July 17th.
July 17th.
We're gonna go backwards.
July 17th.
July
Okay.
17th, 9 to 12 via Zoom.
All right, excellent. That'll be our next meeting. And then for the month of August and September, the conversation about in-person will come back to this board with a little more in depth. We have taken comments from all of you about trying to take away with us the best of what the Zoom environment has provided us in terms of the public record, in terms of public access, while at the same time being able to be in compliance with our health codes and recommendations. And I will note that there are several public bodies now have engaged in in-person meetings and have done so successfully. So with rules in place. And so those things are going to be discussed and looked at for our meetings in the upcoming month here. So if there is any continuing questions or comments, please get them over to myself or the Chancellor. We do take all the comments seriously and want to make sure they're incorporated in a way that everybody feels comfortable with the meeting space. So with that, colleagues, we stand adjourned.
Hi, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Good night, everyone.